The story begins with the events taking place in America, namely in the state of Pennsylvania, the Central Region, house number 107. A mysterious guy walked through the office space on December 23, 2021, at 7:50 a.m. The man approached his colleague and asked how he was feeling, and he, in turn, replied that everything was fine. The red-haired guy wanted to ask his colleague how long he thought they would have to sit here, since 3 years had already passed. According to the colleague, 3 years was a rather short period of time, because he had been here since the founding of this company, and would soon be an employee with 8 years of experience. Having said this, the man was immediately enveloped in memories of the past. Namely, when the events took place 8 years ago. Previously, the main task was to tirelessly monitor the guy on the ship, because it was not their whim, but an order from the CIA, and also the White House. 8 hours and 1 minute. This company has been holding them for 69,457 hours, and there are only 10 minutes left until the end of the working day. Suddenly, the alarmed red-haired guy looked at his commander and said that something was clearly wrong here. They were surprised to find that the speed of the tracked ship suddenly increased. An alarm was displayed on the monitor screen, and the speed of the ship reached 50 kilometers per hour. Horrified, the avid worker dropped his coffee in fright and closely watched the ship's movements. The experienced worker immediately called his boss and notified him of the problem. He shouted loudly into the phone that they had a code red. The CIA learned about this problem with lightning speed, because the boss immediately reported to them. As in the White House, alarmed officials did not understand what to do. Some time later, events continued to occur in the South Pacific, namely Lone Hill, morning, 11:30. Military men with guns were watching a certain guy who was told that he should not break protocol and should return to the safe place. The man also said that the White House and the CIA are very unhappy with this behavior. Pretentiously lighting a cigarette, the guy said that the man told everyone who was dissatisfied to go to hell, because now he needed to talk to his boss. Soon, the unknown person turned around and told the experienced worker that this was an order. The man immediately clenched his teeth in anger, and gritting his teeth, he held out the phone so that the mysterious guy could contact his boss. That same guy immediately called the president and asked him not to be angry, because everything was fine. He also added that the president knows that every agreement has its own expiration date. Over these 8 years he has done enough for America, so now, he just wants to ascend to his native soil and light a cigarette. There's no need to beat around the bush. The guy added that the president knew everything about his condition and health, and the medications he was taking. The guy was sure that the doctors had long noted that his illness was progressing. Then he decided to make the last deal. Those 16 nuclear warheads that were stolen will be deactivated in 3 months. The guy has very simple conditions. They will not touch him for 3 months, and they will lie to the bottom, completely disappear from this world. At that moment, the guy was talking about the entities that were next to him. They were the ones who should lie to the bottom. This is the last demands of the mysterious guy. If the president accepts them, then everything will be fine. But if he doesn't accept it, then disaster will happen and 16 nuclear warheads will explode. And the crazy guy thought a nuclear explosion sounded exciting. The conversation lasted a few more minutes, and the madman and the president discussed something. After which, as if nothing had happened, the guy said that the president agreed, and champagne should be opened in honor of this, but the experienced worker believed that the hero definitely had to go to the underworld. Then the madman realized that the agent seemed offended by something. All because the CIA, he, and the best specialists served him for 8 years. Because of this the agent called the guy Lucifer. The so-called Lucifer did not like this. He considered such a nickname stupid, and understood that they called him that because they relied on the traditions of his country. Still, he liked it better when people called him Yen Luo or Lord of Hell. The agent agreed with this nickname and immediately called him Yen Luo. The soldiers gradually began to approach, and the agent announced that Yen Luo had nowhere else to run. Sitting down on a stone, he explained whether the agent seriously thought that a person like him could be caught. Even the White House understood, but he still hadn't caught up. Cancer cells had already spread throughout his brain and the tumor was getting bigger every second. If he were still fit, he would definitely be stuffed with drugs. The Lord of Hell began to light another cigarette, and counted every second of his time, and he started with the number 5. Alarmed, the agent immediately shouted to his soldiers to disperse and be careful, because the insidious villain definitely has an ace up his sleeve, and this bastard is not so simple. The countdown reached the last number, and it was the number 0. Yen Luo's last words were that he was going to the underworld. Meanwhile, events were taking place in London. A certain man asked to report to the fund that these bloodsuckers do not care whether it is dangerous or not, billions of dollars in profit, that's what they need. But suddenly, a targeted shot followed the influential man right in the head. The sniper was able to figure out who the man was by his silhouette and that he needed to be shot. As it turned out, the sniper was a girl, and she successfully eliminated the target. The girl's code name was Firefly, and she reported the destruction of the enemy. A minute later, as if nothing had happened, Firefly began to leave the scene. On the phone, she told someone that this toy was really not bad, but the shooting speed was not enough. And she asked the fox to take this into account next time. And also, if she has to do similar work again, then you shouldn't call, because the girl was forced to overwork. Over the phone, the fox announced that there would be no more work, and now everyone needs to go into sleep mode. The mysterious killer wanted to know how long the hibernation would last, and the fox said it would be forever. Firefly was furiously outraged by this. She wanted to find out who gave such an order and was going to call the boss. As it turned out, she gave it to the convoy an hour ago, recorded a voice message in the chat. Fury consumed the lady, and she thought that she was being lied to. The alarmed girl began to shake from the shocking news. And then she began to cry. The fox said that these were the last words of the boss. He hoped that they would all go to heaven, and he only had a way to the underworld, after which he asked the Firefly to carry out the order. This would be their last conversation, so they will see each other only in the next life. The girl continued to cry without stopping, and the call ended. Out of despair, she continued to look at her phone, hoping that they would call her again. I don't understand what to do. She got out of the car in the middle of the road. Unexpectedly, she also took a machine gun with her, with which she looked at the people passing by. Feeling indescribable anger, she began to shoot in the air, thereby attracting attention and frightening the people around her. Passers-by quickly began to run away from the girl because they were afraid of being shot. Silently she stood in the middle of the road, and thought that she would also like to know what it was like to visit the underworld. Having taken out a knife, Firefly wanted to do a terrible thing. Because of her desire to go to the underworld, she did a terrible thing with a knife. A few more seconds, and the girl should fall on the asphalt from the loss of her own life. The phone that was in her car indicated that now the girl would be offline forever. Meanwhile, the events took place in South America, namely on the plane. The girls with the code name Hummingbird also announced that they will no longer work for their boss. In a calm tone, the girl replied that she understood everything. And soon after that, the Hummingbird thought that she would also like to see what exactly was in the underworld. Thinking about this, just a few seconds later the plane crashed into a rock, and a terrible tragedy occurred. With sadness and longing, the other girl watched as the Hummingbird came out of the net, the Blueberry came out of the dough, and Iris came out of the net. Immediately after this, she began to take out a pistol, into which she gradually loaded cartridges. Having loaded a full clip, she put the gun to her head and cried. Closing her eyes, the lady thought that she also wanted to be in the underworld. Events continue to occur at the school where the lesson is being held. Suddenly, the teacher turns to Chen Noa to try to solve the example. We were transported to the 23rd of December 2000, namely at 11:45, group number 6. The students began to look at the mysterious guy so that he would come to the board and solve a mathematical example. Coming to the board, the guy looked at the equation and realized that he didn't understand anything. Closing one eye and smiling, he realized that this was truly hell. With the realization of everything, he immediately realized that he was back in his teenage years. The city continued to exist as if absolutely no terrible events had occurred. The boys were calmly playing basketball on the street court, and Chen No himself thought that this was all funny, because the teacher kicked him out of the class and asked him to think about his behavior. Looking around, the hero realized that he had suddenly found himself in a new environment, and there were only strangers around him. And I also thought that the Lord considers this a punishment, but in his opinion, perhaps it is still a reward. Suddenly, someone started screaming and asking for help, because the first beauty jumped from the roof. The unknown girl actually began to fall from a great height, but Chen Noa noticed it. A moment later he was running quickly and wanted to save the innocent lady. Fortunately, he succeeded, and the girl fell right on top of him. Her name was Sun Kuku. Some time later, he and Chen Noa stood outside the director's office. The guy from under the forehead looked at the girl and noted that it was good that she fell from the second floor. If she had been on the floor higher, she would definitely have broken. Suddenly, the door to the director's office swung open. They were met by Principal Sun Xingli, who wanted to know if they had been to the school doctor and if they were okay. At first glance, the good-natured guy said that everything was fine, and he very conveniently ended up there, and the girl successfully fell on him, so he can probably be considered a savior. Sun Xingli wanted to know from the girl why she jumped from the roof, and how she even thought of it. Confused, a worried Sun Cuckoo said that she was looking at the scenery and accidentally fell. She tried to convey to her father that she did not jump, but Chen No could not believe that this was the director's daughter, because you couldn't tell by her appearance. Turning to the main character, the director said, no matter how or what, in any case, he was very grateful to him, and wanted to know whether he needed to be released from classes, and also whether he was already in the hospital, whether any of the guardians needed to call. The guy, in turn, asked the director not to worry, because there was not a single scratch on him. He wanted to rest a little, and then he would be like a cucumber, but Sun Xingli insisted that if he got sick somewhere, he could at any time ask for time off. As he reached for the door handle, a thought popped into his head. The director immediately caught on and wanted to know what else the hero would like. As it turned out, the guy just asked to borrow 50 yuan for him, because for some reason his head ached. Some time later, while examining his ID, he saw that his name was now Chen Noa, his nationality was Chinese, and his date of birth was 1982. Entering his home, he looked around and saw that the house smelled of antiquity. Opening the door to his apartment, he found absolutely no one. Only on the table was a photo of him and some woman. The lightning-fast boy began to rummage through things in order to acquire as much information as possible. Soon, many different documents lay in front of his face. He was able to find out about the guy he was reborn into, that he was 18 years old and an ordinary schoolboy. The parents divorced early, and the child saw tragedy all his life. 6 years ago, the mother remarried to a new man, and the grandmother's son, and a couple more yuan. 3 years ago, because of the new husband's gambling, his mother got into debt, and the two lived like in prison. Last year, my grandmother died, and the young guy was left alone with himself. He tried to hold on, but he was still an outcast at school. The main character immediately realized that this was not bad. The boy essentially had no social connections with anyone. This would save him from a lot of problems. Suddenly, the guy's attention was drawn to the calendar that was hanging on the wall. Paying attention to the dates, he discovered that it was now the 25th. As if he had discovered something, he started searching on the internet for how to get to Seoul in 15 days. Unfortunately, he realized that 15 days would not be enough. In 15 days at 12 p.m., this girl will experience the most terrible tragedy of her life. And Chen Noa realized that it was urgent to save her, but he had absolutely no money to buy a ticket, no passport, absolutely nothing. He knew that a simple guy, of course, couldn't get there. Sometime later evening came. The hero tried to use his abilities on a glass of water standing in front of him. His eyes glowed with a bright radiance, and thus his magical abilities gradually awakened. But unfortunately, not a drop of water was left in the glass. Sighing sadly, he had absolutely no idea what was going on and what he should do. Meanwhile, Sun Cuckoo was quietly listening to music in her house and looking out the window. The song contained the words that love requires courage, and it is necessary to tell everything to the beloved. And then she remembered the moment that caused her to fall from the second floor. As it turned out, the girl was watching Chen No at that moment. He was standing completely close to her, and could potentially save her. The girl in love wanted to get a better look at the guy she liked, and began to lean on the railing. But her hand slipped, and she began to fall. Remembering this, she was overtaken by embarrassment, and the lady felt great shame from the current situation. Suddenly, she discovered a note left in the book. This note was from Chen Noa, and it was intended specifically for Sun Cuckoo. The next day came and the hero was thinking about how he was reborn into a guy with the same name as him and went back in time. Calling on the phone, he wanted to understand what the real me was doing at this time. Unfortunately, when he called a familiar number, he received an answer that an incorrect phone number had been entered. Soon he came to the place where he lived as a child and began knocking on the door. The door swung open, some unknown fat guy opened it, and wanted to find out who the hero was looking for. Sadly watching the resident of the house, the hero did not understand what was happening here and how this was possible. Walking down the street, Chen Noa thought that the phone number was not working, the house where he lived was no longer his. Approaching the store, the hero immediately realized that the saleswoman seemed to have not changed, and asked her for a pack of cigarettes. His gaze turned to another familiar character. The fat man who humiliated him before also did not change, but there was only one question: where is the real him in this world? It cannot be, everything is as before, only he has disappeared. It is then that Chen Noa directly addresses the author and shouts for him to come to him, as if he decided that the character is so ordinary that his story need not be written. After these words, a giant pencil began to fall from the sky, which almost crushed the main character, but he managed to jump away from the crash site in time. That same mysterious pencil had hands with which it began to push off the ground. Soon, that same pencil came out of the place where it had fallen. The pencil with a face asked the hero not to worry, because in the future they will definitely explain and talk about the intricacies of his life. The mysterious pencil asked to follow his story. Events continued to occur the next day. Everyone at school was gossiping about Chen Noa writing a love letter to Sun Kuku. The school children talked about how Chen No is a real role model. He is not even afraid that the director will break his legs. Such gossip greatly embarrassed the girl, and she did not know how to react to them. Gradually approaching her class, her gaze turned to the main character. The lady watched intently as the guy sat and wrote something. The embarrassed girl approached the guy and asked if he had a free minute. Looking at her as if nothing had happened, the guy asked if she had an important question. As it turned out, Sun Kuku approached because he had recently given her a letter of confession. She was very sorry, but she could not accept it. These words made the hero smile, because he thought that the kid was really not a mistake. He hit on the director's daughter. Indignant, the girl felt that her interlocutor was not listening to her, and repeated that she did not accept the letter, and asked not to do anything like that again. This is because she is still a schoolgirl, and the main thing for them now is studying. With interest, the guy immediately asked how many points she had for the entrance exams. Incredulously, the girl said that she had 196 points. The smart hero immediately noticed that then, really, she should study the material, because as far as he remembered, many did not get the passing grade. After these words, he immediately stood up from his workplace, and patting the girl on the shoulder, he wished her success in her studies. The lady sadly realized that she felt as if she had just been rejected. The teacher entered the class and announced that he had a small announcement. Next month on the 10th, the Olympiad is planned to be organized in Yanbian. If anyone wants, they can register now. Students can find out more information in the announcement on the stand. Registration requires a guardian's signature and money for the trip. It was then that it dawned on the hero that it was possible to first get to Yanbian, then to Koreai, and from there to Seoul. This clearly suited him. Immediately he raised his hand because he wanted to take the initiative. The guy wanted to ask if everyone could sign up, and the teacher immediately asked dismissively whether he really wanted to participate in the math Olympiad. A little upset, the guy asked if there were any other Olympiads, and then the teacher advised him to go and look at the stand for himself. Without answering the questions, the teacher began the lesson and asked all students to turn to page 46. From boredom in class, Chen No almost fell asleep, and his classmates were discussing something in the meantime. Remembering his school years, he realized that the lessons were really boring. One of the classmates approached the hero and asked if he wanted to go with them and play slot machines. After thinking a little, the hero agreed, because he had just gotten enough sleep, and now he needed to move. Together with their classmates, they went to the slot machines. Joyfully, all the young guys played slot machines, and each of them was eager to win. Because the main character wasn't very good at acting, he said that he wasn't interested and didn't want to play anymore. Suddenly, someone came up behind him and called him. It was some vile guy who called Chen Noa a scoundrel, and soon wanted to know his name. The impudent man said that they needed to go outside because they needed to discuss something. It turned out that Odnoklasniki was in cahoots with the impudent man. He praised them and said that now they can go. Many hooligans began to gradually approach the hero. He, in turn, was unshakable and wanted to find out what they wanted. The most arrogant guy was called Xiao Dao, but Chen Noa can just call him Dao. Xiao Dao asked if the guy really wrote a love letter to Sun Kuku. This embarrassed the impudent man, because the boy decided to hit on his girl. In Chen Noa's imagination, it was strange to see the bully and the school's top beauty dating. With interest, the guy asked if she was really his girlfriend. And then the bully said that now she is not his girlfriend, but soon she will be. In the meantime, the impudent man wanted to wonder if the hero knew what would happen to him. In order to hear the answer faster, Xiao Dao began to shout. The smart guy really knew what was coming, and he said that in such a deserted place anything could happen. It's really great for this. At the same time, some girl was walking along a dark street, all because the mother asked the father to take dinner because he was late at work, and it was already 8 p.m. All alone, Sun Cuckoo gradually approached her father's work. Suddenly, she discovered Chen Noa stealing a man's bicycle. Surprised, she realized that this was the same Odnoclassnian. The lady didn't quite understand what he was doing here. It turned out that the hero was picking up the key to the lock to take his bicycle. Then the girl came up and asked why he was removing locks from other people's bicycles. Turning around, the guy saw the same classmate whom he had saved earlier. I'm a little worried, the hero asked if he said that he forgot which one was his. Would the girl believe him? She immediately said no. At that moment she turned around and did not want to listen to the guy anymore. Exclaiming to the girl to wait, he wanted to ask her something. In the girl's mind at that moment, it didn't matter what he said, she should behave calmly and not show emotions. Chen Noa came a little closer and said that he thought the lady could be more gentle with him. Of course, he understands that she is the director's daughter and must be exemplary, she cannot hang around strange guys or communicate with ordinary boys, but he asked that she not be so hostile and cold towards him. Feeling embarrassed, Sun Cuckoo immediately asked if he wanted too much. Chen No knew that the girl was not bad, and he understands that she simply does not have enough experience to properly resolve this situation, so she simply refuses. This is quite childish behavior. When he grows up, he will begin to understand everything that the hero was talking about earlier. After all, he saved her life. For Sun Cuckoo this was not an argument, and she recalled that there was only the second floor, and it was not so high, and she would not have died. This was really true, she did not die, but you can still say that the hero helped her, even if it was an accident. After thinking a little, the girl realized that she could not refute this. Then the hero decided to ask if the girl knew Zhang Sun, under the pseudonym Xiao Dao. The girl knew him firsthand, because he had previously guarded her near the school. Once her father drove him away, but then he came again. Then the hero decided to make the girl happy, and told her that now she should not worry, because he would not bother her any time soon. Smiling, he explained, the bully told him that he wouldn't cause any unnecessary trouble, because multiple fractures take a long time to heal. That same Xiao Dao was in the hospital, but his limbs were in casts, and he cried because he had just gotten to the hospital and was already sick. Chen but also added that there is no need for gratitude, because he did it for his own benefit, after which he asked whether the girl had heard about Yanbian's event. Surprised, the lady exclaimed that she had heard and wanted to know why the guy was asking her this. While watching the process, she also shouted at Chen Noa not to break other people's locks. Unable to tolerate what was happening, the girl shouted that his bike was in the other direction. It was black, with a rusty basket and only one working horn. Surprised, he immediately looked at the mischievous girl and asked how she knew all this, since they didn't even study in the same group. With lightning speed, she shouted that she just knew, but at the same time she blushed deeply. Confused, she also asked why the guy was asking about this event. Then Chen No explained that he wanted to sign up, but looked at the requirements and realized that he did not pass. This caused great surprise to the lady that he wanted to go with the Yanbian group. In fact, he just wanted to look at the snow, and her dad, the director, the hero, was sure that the girl knew how to help him. Meanwhile, the lady was thinking that looking at the snow sounded somewhat adult, the guy was probably just joking. Chen Noa closely watched every action of the girl, and thought that she didn't even realize that such actions were like a knife to the heart of guys. It was dangerous to behave like that. Suddenly, the hero's stomach began to growl loudly. Noticing this, the girl immediately asked if he had dinner. Chen sadly replied that he had no money, and she realized that he did not look like himself. With a strange feeling of concern, the worried girl knew that it was hard for him, but not so much. If he needed help, he could talk to her father, and he would arrange quotas for him. Looking into the hero's eyes, the lady also explained that she did not want to offend him. Smiling, the guy noticed that she seemed to know a lot about him, as if she had asked someone to find out as much information as possible, but the girl shouted in concern that she had just heard rumors. A moment later, Chen Noa found the girl's container with food and asked if there was something tasty there. The girl immediately retreated and shouted that this was dinner for her father. Fortunately, the hero was skilled in seduction, and could easily achieve what he wanted with his charisma and smile. Night had fallen and he was riding his rusty bicycle, and I also ate chicken on the go. The long-awaited dinner brought him a lot of pleasure. Meanwhile, the director was asking his daughter where the second chicken leg went, because he noticed that something was missing today. Some time later, the hero arrived home, and the light was on in his room late at night. All because when everyone was sleeping, he trained hard to become stronger. He believed that he had to take shape, he had a long way to go to get to the place he needed, so now he needed to work hard on himself. Even the water in the glass began to shake from the hero's training. Events continued to occur the next day. A confident guy stood near the training section. Along the way, thinking that Teacher Lee does not work at the school, he is one of the employees in the educational unit, and the hero was sure that the company that sent him was organizing this trip. After all, now educational institutions have their own sponsors. Therefore, Chen Noa was confident that Teacher Lee was able to help him implement his plan. Approaching the teacher, he immediately asked what questions the student had. As it turned out, the guy arrived because, unfortunately, he did not have time to enroll in the group for the trip to Yanbian, but he heard that there are quotas for some students. Granted only to students who have stood out in some way. To receive it, you need a signature and a recommendation from the director. It was then that the hero extended his cherished recommendations. Whether this caused an unprecedented shock to the teacher, he could not expect that such a student would have recommendations from the director himself. Well, as it turned out, there was a bank card in the envelope. Then the teacher remembered that there were 3 more free places for volunteers, and asked if the hero knew what the volunteers do. They travel with the group, eat and live with them, but must carry out some assignments. For the guy, this was not a problem at all, and he easily agreed to go with them. The joyful teacher also asked to prepare his personal data, identification number and code, but the hero foresaw this and brought all the necessary documents in advance. The list of students for the trip will be announced on the notice board this afternoon, so the teacher asked the student to go on with his business. Looking at the hero's back, the man also thought that this guy was really difficult. Events continued to happen after school. Sun Kuku walked home and thought about something that worried her greatly. It turned out that in one of the last tests she received only 45 points, and the girl swore to herself that next time she would definitely not fail the test, no matter what, she must keep up with the others. But soon, the motivation completely disappeared, because she knew that the average score was 60 points. Meanwhile, a list of students who were going on the trip appeared. Many classmates around Lady were happy that their name was on the list. It was then that Sun Kuku remembered how Chen Noa said that he would like to see snow. Many odnoklasniki began to approach the tables in order to see the results. To her surprise, the girl found the name Chen Noa there, and realized that now this guy could really go and see the snow. Suddenly the girl began to quickly run somewhere. With incredibly fast speed, she burst into the director's office, and she shouted to her father that she wanted to go to the Olympics in Yanbian. In turn, the father thought that his daughter would not be interested in her, and wanted to find out why she suddenly decided to change her mind. It turned out that she just wanted to look at the snow. Unfortunately, all the places were already taken, but the girl literally began to beg her father, because she didn't care, she could even go with the school choir. The confused man did not understand what was going on, because earlier his daughter had said that she hated singing in the choir and the like. With a heavy sigh, the girl explained that now she likes the choir. Some time later, events continued to occur on the 3rd of January on the platform of the Jingling railway station. While at the station, Lady looked around to find her lover. Suddenly, one of the women started shouting to the volunteers to help the students carry their luggage to the train, and Chen No arrived in time. A joyful girl began to greet him and waved her hand to attract attention. Approaching the girl, the hero already wanted to take her luggage, but another guy came up and decided to do it on his own. It turned out that it was the director who decided to go with the students. While on the train, the guy decided to ask how Lady could join the trip, because he didn't see her name in the advertisement. The embarrassed girl, in turn, replied that it shouldn't concern him how she got here, because she also wants to see snow. Meanwhile, the director watched the departing train, and thought about why this student is so close to his daughter. It is a pity that he is not leading this trip. The train began its movement and gradually moved towards its destination. Meanwhile, the hero, lying on the bed, decided to read a book. One of the students asked Chen Noa to bring something to drink and pack his luggage, but he had to be careful with the camera in his bag because the guy might accidentally drop it. There was no answer from the hero, and he silently continued to read. As it turned out, the teacher told him this, who again turned to the guy. After putting the book away, the hero decided to remind Mr. Liu that he was here to travel, not to work as a laborer. The indignant man began shouting that the guy was a volunteer, and volunteers should help. Then the hero reminded that he had given payment for the excursion. If he was not satisfied, then he could provide a receipt. The man can also talk to the guide and ask him to let Chen Noa out at the next stop, and he will then return to school on his own. Angry, the man admitted that Chen Noa was indeed a very difficult child, and then the guy asked Mr. Liu not to be so angry and offered cigarettes. Continuing to be angry, the man nevertheless decided to take one cigarette. Taking the cigarette into his mouth, the man already decided to set it on fire. But it turned out that it was not a cigarette at all. It was then that the teacher thought that this impudent student had dared to deceive him, and now considered him a dirty bastard. Some time later, the train arrived at Yanbian station. Sun Kuku began to pull out her suitcase, and at the same time thought about what happened to her, because she went on this trip only because of that same idiot. Suddenly, they began to pull the suitcase out of the girl's hands. It was Chen No who threw the girl a soda and began to drag her suitcase. The lady was touched by this, and she closely continued to watch how they took care of that same idiot. Continuing to look after the hero, she stood completely motionless. Instantly her mood changed from annoyed to impressed. Thinking that she also had to go, she quickly began to run towards the guy. Some time later, a scandal broke out in the hotel. The teacher shouted at a certain student for leaving the group, although they were supposed to be here for another 4 days. Oddly enough, it was Chen Noa. The teacher told him that he should under no circumstances dare to think about it. If something happens to him, then he will be to blame. It was then that the guy took out his phone, and then turned on the recording from the voice recorder. It contained incriminating evidence against the teacher. In the recording, Chen Noa was heard saying that he had given payment for the excursion. If the teacher is not satisfied, then he can provide a receipt, and can also talk to the guide, ask him to be released at the next stop, and he will return to school on his own. This angered the dumbfounded teacher even more. He considered the hero a brat, because he mocked him and advised him not to play with fire, or he thinks that he can do whatever he wants and nothing will happen to him for it. The teacher arrived in time and continued to shout that he was not afraid at all, whether he believed it or not, but right now, he would inform Chen Noa to be kicked out of the group. The angry teacher also shouted at the guy not to be so careless, because it would be bad for both of them if the guy showed this recording to someone. However, the teacher gave up and said that it was not easy for him to get this job, so he asked the guy not to do something that could cause him to get hurt, and also gave him 200 yuan for the party. But in the end, the man was not satisfied with everything, and he asked the guy if he knew how strong he was, because he could have made more efforts to convince the teacher. It was then that the hero sighed heavily, and something interesting happened. The hero was easily able to knock the teacher to the ground and stepped on him with his foot, and the man begged to let him go. The student explained to his teacher that there was no need to worry, because he came here to discuss what he wanted to say and just wanted the man to know that he was leaving the group. As for hiding, the guy believed that he could handle it because there were always more solutions than difficulties. Then the hero went, saying that he was counting on the man and wished him good luck. Events continued to occur 36 hours later, on the border between South and North Korea. Tired Chen but video that South Korea should already be beyond this border. It was late at night outside, -13 degrees Celsius, and a terrible wind. This did not bother the unshakable guy at all, and he observed the situation. After which, he suddenly jumped to the right. All due to the fact that the spotlights began to shine in the place where he was sitting earlier. He quickly began to run away from the spotlight so as not to be detected in the open area. I'm running away. He thought that there was a way to get to the base safely. Looking at the floor, he suddenly discovered someone standing in front of him. His surprise knew no bounds, and he raised his head up. Thus, Chen Noa discovered a man in uniform who became angry and was watching him intently. The alarmed military man shouted that there was an intruder there, and he immediately began reaching for his gun to protect himself. Not allowing this, the hero stood up with lightning speed and began actions according to the plan he had just come up with. He hit the soldier with all his might, not giving him the opportunity to get his pistol. In an unconscious state, the strong man began to fall to the ground, splashing with saliva. To prevent the military man from making any more unnecessary sounds, the hero decided to cover his mouth and put him on the floor. After which, the body continued to be dragged through the snow and frozen ground. There were a large number of military personnel at the base. They stood on security towers and monitored the area. One of the soldiers noticed something was wrong and began to look around. The attentive man noticed that it seemed like someone had just walked through the spotlight, but his colleague replied that he was sure that it was just a bird, and there was no need to worry so much, because there was still a patrol below. At the same time, the main character quickly made his way through the defensive positions of the military. While going through the incredible tests, he still realized that this was not a trained body, and it was still too weak. And also, you need to eat some calories and get ready to go through the minefield, because it's already close. For others, this minefield is full of dangers, but for him it is the easiest to pass through the defense line. The hero has carried out a task here many times in his past life, and has long been familiar with this place. Without hesitation, Chen Noa continued to make his way through the many mines, and noticed that there were 30 meters left before leaving the minefield. Crawling through the snow, an unexpected sound was suddenly heard. Unfortunately, the guy realized that he had lost his balance and stepped on a mine. Gradually, the experienced hero began to dig up the M2 anti-personnel mine. Its weight is about 2.8 kilograms, the explosion is not dense, the fuse chamber is metal, the mine's rebound height is 2 meters, the effective destruction range is 10 meters. If he immediately takes his knee, the shell of the mine will rupture, so he needs to be careful. Otherwise, there will be a huge explosion, and there will be absolutely nothing left of the hero. To begin with, he was going to cut a small piece of fabric from the inside of the school uniform to leave the mine under pressure. Worried about his situation, but without hesitation, the hero continued to act. Even though he knew what to do, this idea was still incredibly dangerous. Having secured the fabric to the mini, he was going to attach the piece to the mine so that it would fit snugly with a pin. By unrolling the fabric and using a few pins, he was able to apply pressure to the mine. Next, he just needs to take a lead and a pencil. With shaking hands, Chen Noa began to pull the lead out of his school pencil. He said to himself that it was necessary to remain calm and act carefully. Thus, the lead must be in the fuse so that the mine does not detonate. Fortunately, the guy managed to put the lead directly into the detonator, and the mine did not explode at the moment. Meanwhile, a choir performed under the same song name. Exhausted Sun Cuckoo thought about what a fool Chen Noa really was. Looking into the hall, she unfortunately did not find him among the many people. To her surprise, the girl discovered that she had not seen her lover for 2 days. All this because that same lover is now trying to disarm the mine. Having inserted the lead into the detonator, the guy believed that this should be enough. He also replaced the pin with a pencil lead, and a pressure pocket made from a piece of school uniform fabric. Using double protection, he thought that God should not play with him. Looking at the sky, Chen Noa thought that God had brought him back to this time, and he should not die so early. Fearing detonation, the guy jumped up sharply and began to run to the side. After which, he immediately lay down on the ground to protect himself from the explosion. Fixing his gaze on the minus, he discovered that it had not detonated. Calmly he got up from the ground and began to walk away. Thinking about what must happen, there will also be M2 mines on the southern border. Taking note of this, he quickly continued on his way at high speed. Noticing the gorge, the guy decided to carry out actions according to his plan. And he jumped into the ditch in order to again protect himself from the searchlights. Luckily, he was safe in this place for now. Suddenly, several more soldiers jumped in, but they were in completely different uniforms. With great surprise, they saw a schoolboy who was also sitting in this place. The military immediately shouted that there he was, and began to run towards Chen Noa to catch him. That same guy was not simple, he ran at the military man and pushed him to the side. The man, who did not understand anything, began to fall to the ground, and meanwhile the main character ran past him. With a deft movement of his hand, Chen took out a knife from his pocket and threw it at the second soldier. With great speed, that same knife began to fly towards the unsuspecting military man. It seems that a few more seconds, and that same knife should hit its target. A well-thrown knife hit the target, and one of the soldiers was completely neutralized and could no longer cause harm. Turning his attention to the second military man, Chen Noa realized that there was only one opponent left. Then the man told him to let the schoolboy attack. Unable to tolerate this, the guy shouted that the man should not pretend to be strong and get away from him. There was a powerful blow to the enemy, who still did not understand anything. The hero at this time was completely unshakable, and silently watched as his opponent was destroyed. Experiencing severe pain, the man could not move at all, he only mumbled and heard the snow rustling from his steps behind him. Smirking, the last words the military man heard were that he should be a man and not be arrogant. Putting on the uniform of one of the military, the hero realized that with this disguise and a little caution, he could get past the South Korean border guards. As if nothing had happened, the student in military uniform began to leave the scene. Some time later, the events continued on January 6, 2001, at 1500 hours in the afternoon. Chun Noa bleached his hair and wore a cap as a disguise. The puzzled guy began to call a taxi in order to fulfill his subsequent goals. He told the taxi driver that he needed to arrive in Apgujeong, one of the regions of South Korea. Sighing heavily, the guy also thought that in his past life, he received one task. Namely, to kill Ha Jun-jae, a business tycoon. The reward was $50 million. Then the events continued to happen in Ha Jun-jae's villa. On this mission, Chun Noa first met Lee In-wang, who was 22 years old at the time. Entering one of the rooms of the estate, the guy, not foreshadowing anything, noticed a girl. His surprise knew no bounds, because at the moment he was also 22 years old. The beautiful girl turned to the guy and said that he was already late, considering him a security guard. A shot rang out, and the guards realized that the boss was in danger and their affairs were bad. The hero began to drag the girl towards himself, and she called him a bastard and asked to let him go. Upon seeing the suspects, the guards immediately ordered them to stand. Many people in black surrounded the hero and the girl, approaching in front and behind. But this did not bother him at all, and he opened fire on the targets that stood in his way. A huge number of guards were killed in this battle. Those who remained alive began to shoot. The experienced killer was not afraid of bullets, and he easily dodged them. After which, he continued to fire at hostile targets. After some time, events continued in a country house, which was located in the forest. There the hero abandoned the girl, who was also a killer. As it turned out, Chun Noa wanted to take the girl to a safe place so that no one could find them here. At that time, Lee In-wang was a crazy person with severe mental paranoia. At that moment, she answered the hero that then he could do whatever he wanted with her. Then the girl extended her hand to her savior as a sign of gratitude. Not receiving the desired reaction, Lee In-wang began to attack. She stood up from the floor and began to attack the hero with her fists. With literally one blow to the neck, the guy was immediately able to neutralize her. When the girl woke up, she found herself suspended above the ground, and was completely tied up, and her mouth was also gagged. The carefree hero at that moment pretentiously lit a cigar and asked the girl to be quieter. Events continued the next day. Since the girl had calmed down, Chun Noa began to untie her. For his own safety, he pulled out a gun and asked the crazy lady how badly she wanted to die. Then the girl was interested in only one question, why she was saved. She believed that it was only because she was beautiful. A little embarrassed, she also asked if it was because he was going to sleep with her. Chun Noa walked closer and put a gun to her head. To him she was like a little girl who had absorbed anger and hatred while she was reckless, boisterous and rude. Lee In-wang objected, because she saw that the guy who saved her was strong and very skillful, because last night she saw him kill several people and carry her away. To the hero's knowledge, there are not many people in the world who can compare with him. In this case, the girl bowed and asked to help her kill a few more people. Her hands were shaking, and she was ready to do anything to take revenge. If only she could, even herself, she was ready to give everything for revenge. The tears in her eyes confirmed the fact that she wanted revenge, and begged him to help her with this. That's how Lee In-wang began her training over the next 2 years. The girl recognized shooting and fighting skills. With the help of her acquired skills, she could hit a flying coin at a distance of several tens of meters. And after 2 years, the girl was still able to achieve her goal. She became a ruthless killer who did not hesitate to kill anyone on her list. Everything was all ready, there was emptiness and melancholy in her heart. This happened because she could not forgive those people who were involved in the terrible incidents that happened in her life. In the pouring rain, she held a photograph of her mother, father, and brother. She missed them very much. Feeling the girl's suffering, Chen Nua did everything possible to take care of her, which is how he found out what happened to her on January 6, 2001. Events continue to happen when the hero says to wake up, because this is the first time he has seen someone cry in their sleep. Confused, the girl did not understand why they were waking her up. Then, she asked Chen Nua to sit next to her and watch her sleep, because the lady was afraid that if she did not see him when she woke up in the middle of the night, she would take a gun and commit a terrible act. Hearing this, the hero began to think about the girl's words. She wanted to know if she told him about her past. Worried, Li Yingwan remembered that evening. It was dark, windy and cold. Her mother scolded her brother for fighting again at school, and then they broke in. Unknown people killed her father and took away all the assets of the business. They killed her brother in front of her and her mother, her brother, who loved and looked after the girl since childhood. Then, they brutally killed her mother, using terrible methods to do this. And then, the guy who took her mother's life dragged the girl into the house and did terrible things next to the sunflowers that her mother planted for her. After listening to the story, Chen Nua wanted to understand why the girl was not killed at that moment either. It turned out that they wanted to lock her up, perhaps because they thought she was beautiful, and they were coming back for her, but she managed to escape by jumping into the river. Then the hero asked the question, what happened then? After escaping, she found her father's friend, who took her in, and then he also did terrible things to her, and then handed her over to the killers. The girl didn't want to tell anything more, because before meeting Chen No, she lived in hell, from 16 to 22 years old. Now she was going to live only for the hero, because he allowed her to, and would die if he ordered her to do so, would also unquestioningly carry out any orders, and would kill anyone if he asked for it. For a very long time, her world was completely dark, and the only light she had met recently was Chen Nua. Chen pointed out that there is light in everything, so you shouldn't let darkness overcome you. Everyone can shine on their own, even if they are weak. No one should put their hope in the light of others, so it's worth learning to shine your own light. And from today, the hero decided to name the girl Firefly. Returning to real-time events, the taxi driver turned to Chen Nua. The man turned around and said that they had arrived at the place. Getting out of the taxi, the hero began to head somewhere. On his way, he saw the same Li Yingwan, who stood carefree and ate lollipop. A man stood opposite her, which soon suddenly hit her with all his might. Due to the sudden impact, Li Yingwang began to curse. Approaching the girl, Chen Nua took her by the ear and said that a girl like her should not use curse words. This angered the girl even more, and she wanted to find out who he was. It was then that the hero turned to the girl and greeted her like a firefly. The surprised girl continued to look at the stranger, and did not understand what the firefly meant. Angry, she shouted who he was and what the hell he was doing here. Coming closer, he said that he was a man who fell from heaven, and he came to help her get rid of the nightmares that haunt her. The girl, who did not understand anything, continued to look with a pitiful gaze at the brave guy. Suddenly, she began to smile at him. Her knee was moving as if she was about to strike. And it was indeed so. At first glance, the defenseless girl began to attack with her legs. And then she screamed throughout the street that she was being pursued by a pervert. The worried girl ran down the street and called the police. Luckily, one of them was nearby, and Li Yingwang, pointing her finger at the hero, began to tell something to the policeman. Turning their gaze to the direction where the guy was, they and the policeman were very surprised. After all, where he had previously stood, he was no longer there, as if he had evaporated. Events continued to occur on January 6, 2001, namely at 1800 hours at the National Intelligence Agency. Someone was discussing a secret military operation that was carried out on the border last night. 2 people who were sent on the mission died. Everything that evidenced it was captured in photographs. In addition, an M2 mine was discovered in the minefield area, 300 meters north of the victim, which was neutralized using special equipment. Information, photograph, and preliminary analysis files were sent to each of those present, and this was an incident of military infiltration of the country. The enemy in the north had already pointed guns at them to protect Korea, and orders were issued to find the North Korean agents who had infiltrated their lands as soon as possible. All those present at the meeting served their country faithfully. At the same time, north of the border is the Secret Border Command, which was discussing that the enemy from the south had already entered. From that moment on, martial law was declared, and searches must be carried out in the camp, throughout the entire territory, because they must find the enemy who entered here secretly. their plot must not be allowed to succeed. Having said this, the man wanted to know who was patrolling the scene last night. Having learned this, he ordered to shoot absolutely everyone. Meanwhile, Chen-no was on the roof of a house, sneezing. Wiping his nose, he thought that someone was thinking about him now. In order to refresh himself, the hero took out a chocolate bar. And he started eating it, realizing that he forgot to buy something to drink, but it was still delicious. Hearing the glorious smell, he realized that chicken soup was being prepared somewhere nearby. To conduct a little reconnaissance, the guy leaned over the edge of the roof to look out the window. There was someone on his knees and they asked him why he got into a fight at school. It was a mother who scolded her son, and at the same time her daughter stuck her tongue out at him. The situation that happened made the girl laugh incredibly, and she was truly happy. The hero, meanwhile, watched from the window as Lee Ingwan rejoiced at what was happening. Suddenly, there was a loud sound of a car braking. Chen-no immediately realized that the attack had begun. Many people dressed in black began to walk towards the building. At the same time, the hero watched everything that was happening from the roof of the building. Then he realized that everything had begun and he needed to act. The bandits began to approach the building in order to carry out their attack. Interrupting the story, a small performance began. The author asks the question of who Chen-no was in a past life. He was investigated by many intelligence agencies, including the CIA. But in the end, all the intelligence agencies were so angry because this guy's behavior is completely unpredictable. But still, they managed to find out two things. Firstly, Chen-no cares very much about his comrades. Secondly, he has good friendly relations with his companions. Their relationship is something higher than love, affection or friendship. For each other they were the only hope to survive. Their relationship could not be broken by anything unless Chen-no died. Seeing this, all the partners decided to also go offline. That is why, what kind of relationship is between Chen-no, who decided to change the tragic fate of his subordinates, can be found out in the next part of the video. Returning to the events that happened to the school children, someone started knocking on the teacher's door. It was Sun Kuku, who looked incredibly worried. The friendly teacher wanted to know why the girl was brought here and why she came so late. The indignant lady wanted to know where Chen-no was, because she had not seen him for 2 whole days. The teacher wanted to continue the search later because he had just woken up, but the girls urgently needed to find Chen-no, because at that moment she seriously wanted to talk to him. Having announced that it was late and everyone had been asleep for a long time, the girl still looked alarmed and told the teacher that Chen-no could have left. At that moment, someone started calling the teacher's phone. The worried teacher, deep down, was glad that they were calling him. It turned out that it was the director who wanted to say something. Then the girl began to show that he should under no circumstances tell her father that she had come here. She literally begged not to tell her dad that she had come. Excited and embarrassed, the girl began to quickly run away so that no one would know about her adventures. Having closed the door, the teacher began to cry, and thought that these students, working with them was too difficult. Returning to the events at the mansion, many bandits began to enter the estate. And soon they burst through the door, after which the armed men began to flee. The bandits entered the room where almost the entire family was. All family members were stunned by what was happening. The brothers started shouting at the attackers to find out who they were. One of the bandits hit the defenseless guy and ordered him to get out. Then, Ha Jong-hee, Chai Tion, and Chai Jae-hun also entered the house. They watched the frightened family with indifference and without pity. Meanwhile, Chen-no was watching everything that was happening. The hero immediately realized that this was one of the killers who was involved in a terrible incident. As for the Lee family, it is necessary to start with these 3 people. Ha Jong-hee and Lee's father are in the shipping business together. In 2000, their business took off. This year, 2 brothers Chai Taeyang and Chai Jae-hun, who were secretly involved in loan sharking, illegal drugs and black business of buying and selling organs, became interested in the shipping company headed by the father of Lee and Ha Jong-hee. President Ha joined them, but Father Lee refused. In the end, President Ha teamed up with the brothers and left the Lee family. Due to the strong blow, the brother was injured or unconscious. The mother immediately stood up for him, because she could not tolerate her son being beaten. Meanwhile, another attacker began to pester the girl. She screamed and asked for help, but did not think that anyone would hear her. Turning his attention to the clock, the hero realized that there was just a little more time and it was time to act. The arrogant perverts continued to mock the girl, and she, because she could not do anything, began to cry. Suddenly, a noise was heard, and the bandits immediately turned around to see what had happened. The criminal immediately released the girl and went to the window. Opening the window, he wanted to look out into the street. The hero, sitting on the roof, was watching him, and the bandit shouted asking who was here, because he heard some rustling. I looked out the window and the brothers discovered that there was a fire truck nearby, which was very bad timing. Then the criminals realized that they couldn't stay here any longer, and they had to leave urgently. All together they began to go to the cars, and stole the whole family from the house with them. Luckily, there was an empty house next door, and Chen Noa was able to take advantage of this to trigger the fire alarm to go off. But next time he needs to calculate the time more accurately. In theory, whether the father has already died at this time, the only thing that can be done is to save the widow and orphans. Unfortunately, it won't be easy either way. It is easy to kill everyone at once, but a large number of corpses will only cause trouble for the widow and orphans. Therefore, Chen Noa must change the place he is in. According to his memory, he ran to the garage, and there he found Li's father's car. In a fast car, he started chasing the criminals to save the whole family. Soon, the bandits finally arrived somewhere and stopped. One of the main gangsters discovered that Lee Dong-hyuk was also here. In the past, he always scolded him like a dog and received double the money, reputation and status. Also, the woman he loved was taken away from Ha Jonggi and he had 2 children with her. The worried man looked out the car window and thought about everything that was happening. Then one of the brothers turned to him with a smile and asked if he was at peace in his soul, and he lit a cigarette to relax a little. When they reach their destination, this woman will belong to Ha Jong-hae and he can do whatever he wants with her. The elderly man took a drag from his cigarette and continued his thoughts. Soon, he laughed and exclaimed that he wanted to enjoy not only his wife, but also Lee Dong-hyuk's daughter, so that even in hell he would be a loser. Events continued to take place in an abandoned factory in Seoul. The mother begged to let her children go, for the sake of a past friendship with Lee Dong-hyuk. The woman's words did not convince the man at all, and he stood with a whip near the defenseless prisoners. The woman was literally on her knees and asked to spare her and her family. Unfortunately, Ha Jonggi did not want to listen to her, and raised his whip to strike. Defenseless and innocent children sat on their laps, and their mother covered them with her own body. The ruthless scoundrel hit his mother on the back with a whip, and she turned to him, because she wanted to know why he was doing this. They did absolutely nothing to him, and the woman felt sorry for him that his heart was completely rotten. Suddenly, the eldest son looked out from behind and decided not to hesitate and act. The guy screamed at the top of his lungs and ran to protect his family with his own strength. Pouncing on the villain, he began to push him so that he fell to the ground. Unfortunately, the man was much stronger and was easily able to hit the young man, and he began to fall to the floor. All the guards started kicking the guy, and Lee Ingwan begged them to stop bullying her brother. The crying girl sat in despair and thought that if this was a waking dream, then she would really like to wake up. Blushing with fear and anger, she literally sobbed in front of the bandits, expecting them to have mercy on her and her family. It was then that the innocent lady remembered the same stranger who had told her strange things. Smiling, he said a strange phrase that he was the person who fell from heaven, just to help her get rid of bad dreams. Then it dawned on the girl that this was all a terrible dream, which was what that same stranger was talking about. Suddenly, another car arrived and an incredibly loud sound was heard. Everyone began to cover their ears in fear, because they could not tolerate the sound of such volume. Li Ingwang noticed exactly what kind of car arrived. It was her father's white car, which previously belonged to him. In her mind, she wondered who exactly was driving this machine. A mysterious stranger began to emerge from it. Chen No, as if nothing had happened, got out of the car and said that there were some problems with it. The bandits immediately pointed their weapons at him, and the hero continued to say that the clutch was a little loose. When accelerating, it felt good. There were also problems with the steering wheel, perhaps it needed to be changed. All the criminals were surprised by the guy's story, and it really was not compatible with common sense. Or the girl looked intently at the person who could potentially save her. Smiling, Chen told the firefly that they had not seen each other for a long time. Continuing to cry, the girl could not believe her eyes that it was really him. One of the main bandits exclaimed, because he wanted to find out who this mysterious youth was. The embittered red-haired brother ordered his people to kill the impudent man who dared to come onto their territory. A man immediately started running behind the guy, who was carrying a bat and had rather evil intentions. Swinging at the guy, he was going to hit him with a bat with nails, but he, in turn, stood motionless, as if he was planning something. With the help of incredible dexterity, the main character easily managed to turn around, and also deliver a devastating counterattack that could easily defeat anyone. The force of the blow caused drool to flow from the villain's mouth, and he began to cry in pain. Literally a moment later, the scoundrel was already lying on the ground motionless, and could not move at all. The brothers obviously didn't like this and were a little agitated. The same red-haired man asked the guards not to stand aside, but also to go and finish off the villain. A large number of minions began to attack the guy, not yet knowing his real strength. Due to the lack of information about Chen-noa, all the bandits who worked for the brothers were defeated. When fighting them, the hero did not have any difficulties at all, because he was ready to destroy any enemy. Seeing what was happening, the heads of the gangster groups were shocked and could not believe their eyes. Because the unknown guy was able to destroy many professional mercenaries, and there was not a single scratch on him. Then brother asked Kyung-hoon to kill the newly arrived guy. The old man also asked to kill him, because they believed that the man was a professional soldier in the frontline troops, and this young guy was no match for him. At that moment, the man took out a knife and was ready to fight an unknown enemy. From such an outcome of events, the hero only sighed heavily. Then he asked to be reminded that he was the second person to show him his knife, and then he asked if the man knew what happened to the first person. While carrying out the attack, the man shouted for the young man to stop talking nonsense and start quickly running towards his goal. With a deft move, Ken Hong made his first strike, but it was missed. After all, Chen Noa's agility was much more developed than that of that same elite soldier. With all his strength, the man launched a kick, but the agile youth was able to jump away with ease. The incredibly powerful blow was able to damage the car door, as if another car had driven into it. After this, a powerful series of attacks followed, from which the unknown enemy dodged, as if he could foresee exactly where the blow would be struck. Laughing, the hero nevertheless said that now he would not joke. And now he began to carry out his attack, and not to deftly dodge. The man had a violent death wish and screamed for him to die as he launched his strongest attack. With just one blow, Chen-noa was able to knock the weapon out of the enemy's hands. Now he also attacked, and did it with great speed. Suddenly, the experienced fighter suddenly turned pale and began to experience incredible pain. It turned out that the mysterious enemy had an ace up his sleeve, namely a hidden blade. Calling the elite soldier a show-off, the hero watched as his opponent fell to the ground. This angered the elderly boss even more and he began to think about his next move. Quickly running away, Chen-no still noticed how Ha Zhonghe was trying to make his escape. Then he took the briefcase in his hands in order to make an unexpected move in this battle. With all his might, the guy threw his briefcase right at the back of the scoundrel who was trying to escape, and thus, defeating him, without even really fighting, because there were bricks in the briefcase. Then the red guy began to get even more nervous, with the realization that the main character was much better prepared than their army of bandits. Looking into the eyes of the red-haired scoundrel, the hero told him that he should not look at everything that was happening, but get ready, because he would be next. The bandit realized at that moment that he was now alone on the battlefield. With sadness in his eyes, one of the brothers looked at Li Yingwang, who was watching with delight the actions of her savior. Realizing that he had to act, the man immediately began to run to the girl and ordered her to come here. He didn't care who he was, but it seems that the hero cares about this petty girl. In exchange for this, the impudent one asked to let him go. Chen-noa addressed the girl directly and asked her if she was scared. In the eyes of the poor girl one could only see despair and tears that flowed like a river. Smiling and caringly, Chen-noa asked her not to be afraid. Having considered his actions, the hero said that he did not want to use this trick, because he had not yet practiced it, but there was no choice. After a moment, he made an interesting gesture with his hands, after which, he concentrated all his power and strength on the object. The guy's silhouette was surrounded by a blue bright light, as if he had magic. The man threatening the girl continued to hold her hostage and watch as the hero changed his appearance. Then he started screaming because he wanted to know what was going on because he couldn't move and he felt like something was enveloping his body. This gave Chen-noa the opportunity to get much closer. Having met their eyes, the guy said that this man was already the third person who showed him a knife today. Having taken the girl from the impudent man, he got what he deserved and was shocked by what was happening, because he had never seen anything like this before. Anger destroyed the red-haired scoundrel, and he began to fall to the ground. In turn, the brave savior was able to help the family and the girl, and also saved her from all subsequent suffering that had happened earlier in her life. Touching the girl, he asked if she was no longer afraid. Not understanding anything, she only became embarrassed and continued to look at her savior. All this happened because the hero said that he could save her from nightmares. Events continue to take place 2 hours later, at Li Yingwang's house. Li Yingwan was sleeping peacefully on her sofa, covered with a jacket. Soon, she opened her eyes, after which, she slowly began to get up from the sofa. Looking at her surroundings, the girl began to think that this was her home. Chen Noa also came into the picture and said that she was too scared and lost consciousness. Without hesitation, the guy dined at someone else's house and ate delicious noodles. Turning to the half-asleep lady, he also wanted to ask her to return the jacket. After all, when she lost consciousness, the guy was afraid that the poor girl would freeze, and covered her, but she clung to her jacket, and he was afraid to wake her up, so he left it to her. A moment later, Chen extended his hand and began to take his jacket, but Li deliberately held it in her hands. Sighing, he smiled and said that these were his clothes. At this moment, the lady became even more awkward and became embarrassed. Also, the guy said that he had warmed up chicken soup, and if she was hungry, she could go and eat. Also, her brother was wounded, but her mother had already given him medicine, and before Yingwan woke up, she and her mother had already discussed everything. She will tell the girls everything, and the hero advised her not to call the police. In any case, he completely eliminated the problem. Stretching out his hand, the caring young man wanted to touch the rescued one. To her surprise, he began stroking her hair. As if realizing that this was the same Chen Noa, Li Yingwan began to stroke his hand and blushed. Then she wanted to know why he said that he was much older than her, although they were approximately the same age. This answer surprised the hero, but he explained that due to the fact that she was scared, such scenes can traumatize the psyche, and he has little time, so he cannot take care of her, and does not want her to see this again. Boldly responding, the former victim explained that she had previously been told not to be afraid, and now she was not afraid. But she also wanted to understand who he was to talk to her tonight. The girl also wanted to understand what happened, because he said that he came down from heaven. These words only made the main character laugh. Patting the rescued woman on the head, he asked her not to ask so many questions, because her mother would tell her everything. Chen No also wanted to tell her that her mother would be angry because he used non-standard methods. Mom is sleeping now and will wake up in an hour, but as for my brother, he was so angry that he had to be tied up. Pulling the girl by the ear, he also asked her not to forget to study hard, and in addition, she should not use foul language. Not to mention tattoos, because the hero himself got a tattoo at a young age and regretted it, and also she shouldn't smoke, drink, and remember everything that the mysterious guy told her. Then the girl began to repeat that no obscene language, no tattoos, no drinking, no smoking. She remembered everything, and would do everything he said. But she had only one question. She wanted to know the name of the mysterious guy. Hearing this question, the guy pointed his finger at her forehead and said that children nowadays ask too many questions. Having risen, the savior began to leave, and the girl was amazed that he was already leaving. Having collected all his things, he was ready to leave her life forever. Having asked the last question, the lady wanted to know whether he was really a man or an angel from heaven. After thinking about this question, the guy immediately said that he did not believe in God, and only believed in senior brother Guan. Suddenly, the suitcase under the hero's feet began to move sharply. The hero hit him with all his might and ordered him not to move and be silent. According to the hero, Ha Young-jae was in the suitcase, and he still needs it. Having said goodbye, Chen Noa was about to leave, but the girl stopped him again. Looking him straight in the eyes, she asked if she would see him again. With a grin, the hero asked her whether she liked fireflies or not. Delighted, the girl said that she really liked them, because in the summer her brother took her to catch them together. Showing signs of attention, the guy touched her neck. And again the girl leaned closer to receive a hug from her savior. In her ear, the hero quietly told her not to catch fireflies anymore. Closing her eyes, little sister thought of only one thing, so that her savior would never leave her again. Then she shouted for Chen Noa not to leave her. It turned out that she was sleeping all this time, and screamed when she woke up. Thinking about the mysterious guy again, she realized that he had really left. At that moment it dawned on her. She remembered the office that was located not far from her. Entering it, she immediately sat down at the desk and began to write something down. With the desire to remember everything, she began to write down that she should not start drinking and should not start smoking. After writing a few lines, she realized that she had forgotten the next words. Fortunately, Li Yingwang still remembered them and continued to write them down. She also indicated to her notebook that she should trust elder brother Guan, but she did not understand at all who this brother Guan was. After thinking about these words a little, she remembered the clothes that the hero was wearing. And she wrote the words that were depicted on the clothes of her savior. Based on the hieroglyphs, she was able to guess that it was Chinese. With joy, she remembered that her brother had a Chinese dictionary in his office. A few minutes later she began to rummage through books in order to find that same dictionary. A certain man noticed this and watched the girl. As it turned out, it was the same brother, and in the meantime, she found the word Jiangning in the dictionary, the name of the place, the location of the old mansion in Jinling City. Feeling fear and horror, the brother tried to shout to the girl, but there was a gag in his mouth, and no one could hear him. Some time later, events continued to occur at Ha Zhangyi's secret residence in Seoul. Putting on gloves, the guy slowly began to open that same suitcase. Feeling great fear, the man began to cry and looked at his captor in horror. As he continued to cry, he wanted to know who the hell this guy was. Without answering, the kidnapper began to take it out of the suitcase, after which, he continued to drag it along the floor like garbage. Arriving at some place, the hero for some reason stopped. Pushing aside the cabinet, he went to the safe. With the desire to make a deal, Chen No asked the elderly man to open the cash. The naive man seriously thought that in this case the guy would let him go, but he only said that he would allow him to die with dignity. The scoundrel had a desire to find out in more detail what it meant with dignity. The fact is that Ha Zhangyi will have the opportunity to choose any clothes from the closet that, in his opinion, will be the most decent, wear them, and then die. The man continued to cry and tried to turn his head. He begged to let him go, and could pay him, give him as much money as he wanted, give literally everything, just so that the hero would not kill him. Pointing to the safe, the unshakable guy asked to open it. The crying and pitiful old man begged to be let go, because there was a ledger in the safe, and absolutely everything was written down in it. This was indeed the case, and the book was lying along with a large pile of money and gold bars. But the guy was not interested in his machinations, and all because he only needs money for food. Suddenly, the kidnapper noticed a photograph of the victim. Taking the man by the hair, he wanted to find out if it was his boat. And this was true, her maximum speed was 30 knots. Smiling, the hero asked to add one more condition, because he wanted this ship. With all his anger the man continued to shout that then he should let him go, and he could exchange his life for the ship. With joy and delight, the guy exclaimed that he would let him go, after which he asked where the boat was. Some time later, the hero sailed across the endless expanses of the sea on his brand new boat. Feeling a sense of satisfaction, he sailed on the boat he had just stolen and sang songs. 2 hours ago, interesting events also took place. A man shouted that the kidnapper had confused him with someone and he didn't know him. As it turned out, it was not a mistake. The daughter of his friend Li Yingji took refuge with them when she was running away from the bandit, but who would have thought that he would want to abuse her? The bald man did not understand what the hero was telling him, because in this reality this did not happen. He said that the Lord of Hell would explain everything to them when they went down. The hero pushed the barrel. That same barrel dragged down the lives of 2 scoundrels who tried to harm the Li family. Admiring what was happening, the hero only watched the process. Smiling, he also realized that he had almost forgotten that he was Yen Luo, or the Lord of Hell. Of course, he also needs to be more careful with his tricks to save them. The guy spent a lot of effort, and now he is experiencing the consequences. Meanwhile, in the auditorium of Yen Ban School there was a last event, and the teacher asked to pay attention to the leading teachers of Jiangning 8 Middle School, and all students must attend. All the students watched the performance with delight, and only Sun Kuku sat with a sad expression on her face. All the time she was thinking that Chen Nua didn't come anymore, and she hadn't seen him for 4 days. Meanwhile, the teacher was thinking that if any of the students were absent, the students and teachers would be severely punished. This greatly worried the man. he was literally obsessed with the consequences of the whole situation and the money he had previously received. He was overcome with anger, and this time he wanted to kill this little Chenhua. Suddenly, a man approached the teacher. It was the team leader, Director Fong, who asked Luan where the student named Chenhua was, because earlier he was told that he would arrive in half an hour, but he was nowhere to be found. Then the teacher said that the guy went to play at the nearest internet cafe, and the director knows that boys his age really love computer games. The man hoped that this was the case. There was still half an hour before the start of the events, and he asked the teacher or the students to help find him, because he believed that nothing had happened to him. And as for the teacher himself, he had to go with him. When the time came, the director wanted to see what to do next with the useless teacher. Feigning a smile, the man tried to explain to the director that the student was not lost, and he was sure of it. As he left, the excited and alarmed teacher wished the director a good journey. This situation infuriated the teacher even more. He thought that the director was sent by the Education Bureau, just as an assistant, and everyone flattered him and called him the director. Taking all his will into his fist, the man shouted out where this damn Chenhua was. Half an hour later, the students and the teacher gathered to clarify the circumstances. Sun Kukuk kept saying that a classmate was lost and they should call the police, because they couldn't find him, so they should ask the police for help. At the same time, the director realized that if they called the police, he would be fired as the group leader, and no one could replace him, and his future would go down the drain. The alarmed girl continued to put pressure on the man, and shouted to the teacher, asking why he was hesitating, because he should hurry up and call the police, because something might happen to a classmate. Visibly nervous, the man asked to continue the search, because they might find something they hadn't noticed before. Then the director turned to Luan, because the guy lived with the missing student, and wanted to ask him if the hero had ever mentioned that he had friends or relatives in the area. Unfortunately, the guy did not remember this, and then the man asked where the missing student's luggage was. It should have been in the room. In this case, the director decided to go in search of the room. Perhaps there was something like a contact address in the suitcase. Together they headed to the student's room. Each of them was noticeably alarmed and expected to see a miracle. With trembling hands, the teacher tried to open the door to the room. And the arrogant man was in a hurry, because he wanted to quickly see what was in the room. Closing his eyes, the worried teacher began to sweat profusely due to fear. The door gradually began to open, and a bright light was visible behind it. The teacher's surprise knew no bounds when he saw what was before his eyes. Someone slowly began to leave their room. Not knowing what to say, the teacher just stood there with his mouth open and watched. And then he burst into tears, because that same scoundrel had finally returned. Sun Kuku even closed her eyes because of what she saw, and the director simply watched in surprise. It was really the main character, who was wearing only one towel. With relief, the men began to sort things out with the unlucky student. The unsuspecting hero revealed that he actually went to an internet cafe to play a little. Having heard such an answer, the director was not satisfied with this, and he believed that this was not discipline at all, and not organized, and also nonsense. You need to be at least much more organized. The angry man shouted that the teachers could not teach him this, what kind of student he was, and when they returned, he would be punished, and also, when he wrote a review of the book, he should think carefully about how a student should behave. Suddenly, the hero looked at the teacher who was behind. He, in turn, immediately became alarmed, and it dawned on him. Timidly, he began to tell the director that their little trip was almost over, the event was about to begin. Having calmed down a little, the director explained that, fortunately for the teacher, he already had a lot to do today. Following the man, the teacher shouted to him to be sure, because he would definitely take up the education of the unlucky student. As soon as the door closed, Chen Nua said that he thought that he and Lu would definitely get along. There was no limit to the rage, and the teacher shouted that this time he had deceived the teacher, and the school would remember it. As a sign of reconciliation, the hero deleted the video, which contained incriminating evidence on the man. Smiling sweetly, the hero asked the man if he wanted peace, because he was a man of his word, and there was no need to worry, because he could trust him, but the teacher still thought that his student was the little devil. Evening came and events continued at the hotel. Approaching room 502, the hero began knocking on the door. The door was opened by some plump girl who asked what he wanted. He wanted to know where Sun Kuku was. With delight, the roommate said that the girl was in the shower. And then the hero looked into the room, and the classmate was not against it. Sun Cuckoo was indeed there, taking a shower. The hero asked the neighbor to say that he would be on the roof and wait for her. Rising to the top of the building, he was indeed expecting a girl. The joyful lady opened the door to the roof and began to approach her long-awaited lover. Turning around, the guy was also glad that the girl came to him. He invited her to show her what the snow they wanted to see was really like. The unsuspecting girl watched with admiration as many snowflakes fell onto the roof. At that moment, the hero asked her to come closer. Then he handed her a bottle of soda and wanted to treat her, but the lady replied that it was too late to drink that and she would gain weight. The smart guy noticed that it would be nice if she got fat. Drinking soda on the roof with a handsome guy, she felt embarrassed and felt a pleasant feeling of sweetness from the soda. The guy decided to talk about how he was in a very good mood today, because maybe he did what he always wanted to do. Mila smiles. The girl asked if this desire is due to the fact that they are looking at the snow together. He had previously heard people say that life is always full of regrets, but in reality, life is beautiful but difficult. And then he shouted that he was damn sorry. If there is a gap between the living and inanimate world, then it is a matter of time. Continuing to speak, he also added that they are hostages of life, and he can take care of himself. Turning to the girl, he smiled mysteriously. And then, I decided to ask one single question for Sun Cuckoo. Embarrassed, the lady said that she was ready to answer it. And at the same time she was thinking about whether the guy was going to offer her strange things. At most she could allow her to hold her hand, but not kiss her. She wanted to kiss, but she also thought that she couldn't take risks. It turned out that this was just a request for help in writing a book review. It was noticeable that the girl was disappointed by this, because she was not expecting such a question at all. Some time later, events continued at school, namely, in the director's office. The radio said that due to the strong cold wind from the south, there would be heavy snowfall in the Jinling area today, and asked all citizens to stay warm and adhere to safety measures. Listening to this, the director thought that he had just returned yesterday, and hoped that they were taking everything seriously. Moreover, he wanted to understand what happened to Sun Cuckoo and that classmate named Chen Noa. The events took place the day before, at the Jinling railway station. Due to the fact that the girl almost fell, the hero helped her stay on her feet. They looked at each other sweetly, as if they were about to kiss. The director noticed this, and the indicator began to cough to draw their attention. Sun Cuckoo was surprised by this, because she did not expect to see her father here, because he had previously said that he would not come. Thinking about that situation, he persistently wanted to understand whether his daughter could fall in love so early. Walking past one of the offices, the director decided to do something. He entered one of the offices and stood in front of the class. The students began to think that one of their classmates had messed up, or had to announce something interesting, or perhaps there could be some bad news. Opening his eyes, Chen Noa noticed that it suddenly became quiet, as if the atmosphere in the class had changed. It turned out that the director was standing in front of them, and the hero was demonstrably asleep in class. The man wanted to announce to the students that Teacher Wu went outside last night and got injured due to the snowfall. He will be replacing him for some time. To better understand the level of the students, the director prepared a test, and hoped that they would all write it well. And if they fail, they will stay after school to clear snow on the playground. Meanwhile, the man also closely watched the hero, and looked only at him. At the same time, the guy felt like a target. After class, he was the only one left to clear the snow, and thought that a man's intuition was really not mistaken, as if he had offended the man in some way. Unexpectedly, Sun Cuckoo exclaimed Chen Noa's name and began waving her hand at him to attract attention. Turning around, he looked at the girl, because he wanted to find out what she was doing here. Handing over a thermos of warm tea, she asked if he was thirsty, because she had come to help clear the snow. The director watched his daughter and her lover through the window all this time, and believed that the guy next to her was not worthy of her. On the second day, the evil man also sent the hero to clear the snow after school, although today the test was passed successfully, but the father thought that the guy was cheating from his classmates. On the third day also, Chen Noa was left shoveling snow because he didn't do his homework, even though there was no test today. On the fourth day, the guy was also left to clear snow, although there was no test today, and he passed his homework. The director asked him what year the 15th National Congress was held. The hero was able to answer that from September 12 to 18, 1997, Then the man asked, how many people took part in it. The guy answered without hesitation that 2074. And then the impudent person asked to name their names. On the fifth day, even the teacher arrived at his workplace, but the director still could not leave Chenhua. He sighed heavily. The hero immediately realized his fate. With a smile, he stood up from his workplace, and already had a broom in his hands. I don't understand anything. The man answered what he was doing with the broom, but the guy thought about it prematurely, because he was going to clear the snow today. The director clearly looked worried, and asked the guy to remove the snow later, because today there was no need, and he needed to go into his office. Events continued to occur in the director's office. There was a policeman standing there asking the guy if his name was really Chenhua. As it turned out, this man came from Longtan prison. Chen was visibly nervous, and wanted to know if anything had happened. The fact is that the hero's mother named Oh Xiuhua is undergoing rehabilitation in their prison. Because of her good work last year, her application to visit relatives was approved. Also, the policeman did not know for what reason, the guy never visited her. Listening to all this, he understood that this happened before he was reborn, and he did not know it. That is why the mother asked the policeman to talk to her son because she misses him very much. The concerned policeman wanted to find out from the son if he really did not want to visit his mother. At the same time the guy understood that due to family relations, he was thinking, which may explain why he didn't visit her. Hearing the policeman, his words upset the director. The man began to think that deep down this child must be in a lot of pain. And then he told the officer that Chenhua was his disciple, and he should talk to him first. In general, the officer wanted to say that visiting relatives contributes to ideological change, prisoners, and he hopes that children understand this best of all. The director literally began to stand up for his student, saying that he was just a child, and he should not put too much pressure on him. After all, he is his teacher and talk to him, and the officers better return. If something happens, then they will call. Chenhua watched everything that was happening with surprise. A little worried, the officer agreed and said that he would no longer interfere. Shortly after this, he began to leave. Then the director closed the door to a confidential conversation, and he said that he had read Chenhua's school file to understand his situation in the family, and had learned a lot from Mr. Jing now, because he didn't think it was so difficult. The concerned man believed that the hero is a very smart child, and he takes care of himself, but he shouldn't overload himself psychologically. If difficulties arise, he can always talk to the director. Looking at his watch, the man realized that it was already late, and his student was probably hungry. Smiling, he turned to Chenhua with a proposal to go to his house and eat together. Events continue to take place in one of the apartments in the big city. Sun Kuku sat calmly at home and ate delicious and juicy corn. Suddenly, someone began to open the door and enter. The girl was incredibly happy and exclaimed that her dad had returned. To her surprise, she discovered that Chenhua was with her father. The friendly young man also said hello to his cute classmate. When she saw her classmate, the girl, who did not understand anything, was even more shocked, and she fell into a stupor. Soon after, she started running to her room, and even left corn on the couch. Locked in the room, she could not understand why Chenhua came to her home. She was somewhere inappropriate and was eating at that moment. The hero, too, just continued to look at the closed door, and thought that his classmate was very cute. Meanwhile, the man thought that he had made a mistake and brought the wolf into the house. Then he asked the hero to change his shoes, and then go into the living room to do his homework. Suddenly, the door of the room opened and Sun Kuku came out, who wanted to ask her father why Odnaklasnian came to their house. His father explained that he had brought him to dinner and they both needed to do their homework conscientiously. The jealous man shouted that Chenhua would do his homework in the dining room and his daughter in the living room, and they should not chat with each other. Some time later, the hero began to write his homework. The lady, meanwhile, looked at the guy and thought that he was pretending, because he was not afraid of her father. It turned out that Chen had prepared some kind of note and crumpled the paper on which something was written. To convey the secret note, he called the dear lady and showed her the piece of paper. And immediately after that he threw it. The bundle of paper landed right on the table. The message itself indicated that Chenhua was being watched by the girl's father. That's when she got the idea that this guy was waiting for her father's approval. The indignant director, meanwhile, sat and read the newspaper, but kept a close eye on the couple. From time to time, he thought that this brat was acting as if he was not here at all. In this way they communicated with each other, although the strict man forbade them to do so. In the next message, the hero asked Sun Kuku why her father was reading a newspaper from 2 days ago, as if something was wrong with him. This fact made the daughter laugh very much, and she laughed loudly, although she tried to hide the laughter with her palm. Fury was visible in the man's eyes. He thought that this scoundrel had called her daughter 32 times already, and Kiki had looked at him 57 times, and he understood that he couldn't stand it now. It was at that moment that the father decided to stand up and shout his daughter's name. A little dumbfounded, the girl asked her father what was the matter. It turned out that the man was saying that it was already 7:30, and her mother had to be late at work, and he was going to go buy something to eat. Walking out the door of the apartment, the father thought that he no longer wanted to see this, and would never allow Chin-noa to come to their home again. Some time later, they all sat down at the table to have dinner. For dinner they had duck legs, just for their age, because they can eat a lot to grow up healthy. Sun Kuku have 2 pieces of duck leg, and the hero wanted to serve her the sauce. To prevent this from happening, the father looked closely at his daughter and was indignant. What she saw made the lady laugh, and she asked her father to eat with them. 3 hours passed and they still continued to eat. The smart father noticed that Chin-no had already eaten, so he should go home, because it is not safe on the street if it is too late. Smiling, the hero only replied that everything was fine and he was already used to walking at night. Kindly and politely, the young man asked Kiki for another portion, because he wasn't quite full. Suddenly, the man jumped up from the table and shouted what he had already said, that Chin-noa had already eaten and would not receive any more supplements. A few seconds later, the incredibly angry father kicked the hero out the door. Turning around and looking at the door, the guy thought about whether he should worry about his relationship with his father-in-law. Walking along the corridor, he noticed a certain woman walking next to him. She really looked familiar, and he immediately noticed her. As a result, they passed opposite each other and said nothing, just crossed glances. Passing by, the guy realized that this woman was very similar to Keek's mother. Going outside, he felt a strong cold and looked around. Next to him stood a car in which someone was smoking cigarettes. The guy's scent receptors sensed a familiar smell. He immediately realized that this cigarette smell was the same as Keek's mother. Looking at the window of Director Sun's apartment, he realized that he couldn't just leave it like that. Events continued to occur the next day, namely on Monday morning. Avid gamers sat in an internet cafe to play games, and the main character was there. He was sitting calmly at the computer and smoking a cigarette, and was looking for something on the computer. Suddenly, someone came up and hit him on the hand. It was the same principal Song who wanted to know why the guy was skipping classes. It turned out that the man had been looking for him all morning. A few seconds later, the smart guy began to take out a pack of cigarettes. Smiling, he told the man that he shouldn't stand with such a stone face and it would be better to smoke, but the experienced director was more interested in where the young man learned to talk like that. In any case, he really gave good advice, and the man listened to him. Sitting down on a chair and taking a cigarette into his mouth, the young man also suggested that he light a cigarette, otherwise he would be lonely. These words affected the father, and he got a little angry, hitting the guy with his elbow. He also said that he shouldn't follow the example of these youngsters in order to turn out to be cool when he grows up, looks back and understands how funny and naive it is. At that age, the director understood that this was a rebellious period of youth, and also difficulties at home. The smart man knew that the guy was very temperamental and did not like to deal with other people, but the father also wanted to understand whether he was planning his future. Looking at the director, the hero could not think of anything to answer. Then he asked what he was going to do in the future, and what it was connected with, because he didn't want to see a smart guy become a bully, and would be very upset if he really wanted to become like that. The main character immediately explained to the teacher that in reality everything is not so, and he is not such a problem child as he thinks, and wants to become an adult fish, because he thinks that it is not bad. In fact, he enjoys boredom, peace, freedom, the fact that no one bothers him, that he has nothing to worry about, and just wants to eat, drink and make ends meet. And also bask in the sun and look at the snow in winter, sometimes pester his daughter. But at that moment the guy also explained that it was actually a joke. He also added that the director was actually a good person and a teacher, but still asked to be left alone because he was not one of those who went astray. In fact, the guy just wanted to mess around and get bored sometimes. Then the director asked what he was going to live on in the future, because in this way he obviously wouldn't have life and money. Meanwhile, Chen Noa remembered that tens of thousands of dollars and gold bars would be enough for a while. If he went on similar missions a couple more times, he could go to the center to buy dozens of apartments, and then wait for prices to rise in 20 years, and will be a landlord who collects rent and has no reason to work. Hearing silence in response, the man handed over a letter of recommendation. He spent a lot of effort on him to help the guy find a part-time job, and also negotiated working hours and benefits. In the last 2 years, he needs to save some money and not waste it easily. It will be enough for his college education and he can work and study hard to earn some expenses and living expenses, although it is a little hard and tiring, but it will help him to avoid poverty in the future. The guy once again emphasized that the director is really a very good person. Good people like him will die out in society in 20 years. Indignant, the director ordered him to talk less and think before he says anything. He has classes in the afternoon, and he will come to them. Some time later, events continued on a dark winter evening. Coming out of his apartment, the guy thought that he was very tired, but such idleness is very cool. He apologized to the director, because tomorrow he wanted to continue skipping classes. Sooner or later he will completely figure it out, and tomorrow he will go to prison. In any case, this image does not belong to him, and he needs to pretend to be the real Chen Noa. Events continued to occur the next morning near Lawton Prison. The guy announced that he had arranged a meeting last night. A kept in prison notified Oh Xiuhua that her son had come to visit her. The mother quickly approached the booth to talk with her son. Tears began to form in her eyes as she was touched that her baby had come to visit his mother. Immediately she started asking questions about how he had previously refused to come and see her, as if he hated her so much. Smiling, the hero explained that previously he did not understand some things well, and he was hurt, but now he felt relieved and did not hate the woman. And it was true. He also brought some chocolate and cookies, because prison life must be very difficult. The joyful mother said that it was not so difficult for her, and everything was fine, asking her son not to worry about her. She wanted to know how things were going with him. Having consoled his mother, the son said that everything was fine with him. The teacher and classmates were taking care of him. The mother wanted to tell him that she would try to get out of prison early, and her sons should wait, and they would definitely catch up. Good-naturedly looking into each other's eyes, the son agreed with her. The woman also had a small request, because she did not trust anyone as much as her son. She had a daughter, the hero's half-sister, and her mother asked to visit her. She is now 5 years old, and the worried woman was really very worried about her. She often has dreams, and if it's not difficult, she really wanted to be seen with her. It doesn't matter, even if he doesn't want to, his mother has already done it. It's all his fault, his mother. The puzzled son was surprised that he had a younger sister. He sighed heavily. He still reassured his mother and said that he would definitely visit her. Some time later, events continued to occur in the Women's Federation. This is where the younger sister was, and Chen Noa was going to happily buy her some sweets for the children before they went inside. The good-natured woman, watching the guy, knew that he was very smart. Literally a few minutes later the hero already had a whole bag of sweets. The woman told him that she had been visiting his sister for several days. She was sweet and beautiful, and unpleasant to be around. Due to the special situation of her parents, they did not have enough money to support her, so the Federation allocated funds and sends them an additional 200 yuan every month. A sweet and kind woman transfers this money to the foster family's account every day. Listening to this story, Chen Noa thought that after Xiuhua and her father went to prison, their daughter was given to her father's younger brother to be raised. After listening to her, he thought that her sister's life was much better than Chen Noa's after the death of her grandmother. Entering the building, they finally came to the place where the younger sister lived. The door opened and a woman looked out and greeted worker Lu. She immediately opened the door and then invited guests into the house. Entering the room, the guy immediately drew attention to a woman and a girl who were watching cartoons on TV. The Federation worker introduced Uncle Gu and Aunt Fong to a new member of the family, namely Chen Noa. The man was amazed and could not believe his eyes that it was really Chen Noa. The polite guide apologized for the trouble, because he didn't want to cause them any inconvenience, and came here to see his little sister. Handing over a bag of sweets, his parents gave him the go-ahead. After which, they notified the guy to sit down, and the man was going to ask his wife to bring the girl, because she really loves to play in her room. After a few minutes of waiting, the woman was leading a little girl. The caring foster mother patted the girl on the head and told her that this was her older brother and she needed to say hello to him. The younger sister was very worried and was afraid to say anything to her brother, because she was embarrassed. Although the girl was shy and did not speak much, the couple raised her well, and they truly adored their niece. Even the sweater that the girl was wearing was purchased quite recently, and it was not cheap. The foster mother asked Lao Gu to take care of Xiao Lu and the others, while she was going to go to the kitchen and prepare lunch. Meanwhile, the hero began to open the banana. Immediately after that, he politely offered it to his little sister. At first, the girl didn't know how to react to this, and simply blushed while continuing to look at her brother. Then, her gaze shifted to the man, so she wanted to ask his permission. A little embarrassed, the man joyfully explained that her brother had peeled a banana for her and she should eat it. Then the girl began to eat the banana, which her older brother gave her in good faith. As soon as the girl ate the banana, her caring brother gave her another tasty treat. With surprise, my little sister began to reach for the goodies. Suddenly, someone began to abruptly take away her newly acquired sweetness. It was some boy who thought that this was his tasty treat and he would eat it. This did not bother the adoptive father at all, because he believed that this was normal for children, they were used to fighting at such a time. In turn, the main character made his conclusions. Soon, he smiled and said that children at that age are very mischievous, and it must be very difficult for them to raise too. Meanwhile, the foster mother notified that dinner was finally ready. The married couple asked Chen Noa to feel at home and not worry, but did not give him chicken legs, because they knew that he used to love them. The good-natured couple wanted the guy to come more often when he had time. Some time later, events continued to occur after lunch at the gates of the community. The woman felt very sorry for the hero's sister. At a young age such an incident occurred with her parents. But fortunately, now the child is doing well, and the brother does not need to worry, because the Women's Federation monitors the lives of children and will not allow them to be offended. The guy, in turn, thanked the woman for her help and concern, after which she began to leave, because she still had a lot of things to deal with. The woman began to leave, but the hero did not take his eyes off her and was thinking about something. He understood that although Lu was enthusiastic, she was still young and inexperienced, and he was afraid that she might miss out on many things. After all, a change of clothes hung on the balcony, but there were no clothes for the little girl, which means she didn't have enough clothes, they had been changed a long time ago. The sweater on her looked clean, but there were a lot of threads sticking out at the elbows, and her clothes didn't look like the girl's style. Most likely she wears the clothes for their son. Also, she was so hungry that there was not a single grain of rice left at the bottom of her bowl. There wasn't even a piece of meat left on the bone, which means on ordinary days she doesn't eat. Also, the hero understood that an allowance of 200 yuan per month was quite a lot of money. No wonder Xiuhua was so worried and begged to come and take a look. Having lit a cigarette, the main character continued his thoughts. Even though he took the guy's life, even if that was the case, he wanted to do everything possible for his family. Soon, the guy independently approached the door of his adoptive parents and knocked on it. A man came out of her with lightning speed and asked what was the matter. It turned out that behind him a woman was beating a little girl, and she was screaming very loudly. The angry mother screamed at the girl and persistently asked her not to cry and to keep her mouth shut. She believed that her little sister was only a loss, and she should wash the dishes instead of hitting her. The stepfather began to push the hero and asked why he came here. The mother's surprise knew no bounds when she saw the brother of that same girl. Chen Noa was filled with rage and couldn't believe his eyes. Feeling very angry, he hit the man with all his might and started screaming about why they were treating his sister this way. The insolent woman began to run towards the hero and shouted that he had hit her husband and should not dare touch him. The unperturbed guy just pushed her away and ordered her to get out of the way. Approaching closer, the man looked with great fear at the attacker, as if he knew what would happen to him. Without any ceremony or insolence, the hero decided to do what he deserved. The worried scoundrel exclaimed and wanted to know what they would do with him. Even the grandmother stood up for her son and got up from the sofa, because she wanted to help. The elderly woman began beating the hero on the chest with her fists and screaming for her son to be released. Looking at the impudent old woman, the hero realized that she was not dead yet, and asked when her daughter-in-law beats her granddaughter, how can she calmly sit and watch, because this is a 5-year-old child. The vile old woman began to continue screaming, and said that it doesn't matter how old she is a pest, and her son went to prison for pests, and the Chen No family only causes problems. Then the guy realized that this old woman was as vile as everyone else in this family. Immediately after this, the unshakable guy began to walk towards the balcony. In order to scare the worthless father, he hung him upside down from the balcony, and he was hanging from a high-rise building. Also, the guy warned him not to scream, because if he screamed, he would let him go. He also ordered that no one should approach. If they did this, the man would fall. The grandmother could not come to terms with this and wanted to do something, but the woman stopped her, asking her not to provoke her. The woman literally begged not to touch her husband. If he had something to say, he had to say it now. Smiling, the hero realized that finally they could talk like humans. Hearing that there would be a conversation, he immediately threw the impudent man to the floor. The elderly grandmother immediately rushed to her useless son, and she started shouting that Chen No was a scoundrel, his father didn't raise him enough, and his grandmother wanted the car to run over him. The vile woman also screamed that he was breaking the law and she was going to call the police. All this time the guy was silent and looked intently at the scoundrel. He immediately realized that he could be killed and asked everyone to shut up, after which he asked Chen not to worry, and wanted to talk to discuss everything. Without holding back a smile, the guy realized that something interesting might happen now. A little later, he began to go to the kitchen. This was in order to take a huge cleaver. The family began to scream and cry. They were all worried. Only the elderly woman asked to kill her, because she had already lived enough. Then the hero put the knife on the table and asked them to calm down. He was not going to use the knife today. To avoid bloodshed, he asked the worthless family to answer his questions honestly. The impudent mother continued to shout that the guy was not afraid in vain. If he did something to them, she promised to put him behind bars. Hearing this, Chen Noa explained that he is not afraid of such threats because he did not harm anyone today. Even if the police come and take him away, at best they will scold him and try to educate him, and after leaving prison, he already knows where will come. They all live here together, so they won't be able to run far from here, and he will dare to come to them with a knife if they don't listen to him. Turning to his wife, the man shouted that if she didn't want to kill them, then she should shut up. Feeling remorseful, the man began to talk to Chen. He started talking to him and asking him what he wanted, talking about whether he would cause trouble just to vent his anger. In turn, the guy had absolutely no desire to talk to the scum, and, understanding everything that was happening, he wanted to take his sister with him. And then the woman shouted that they live off guardianship. As it turned out, they received not only 200 yuan a month, but also alimony from their parents. The pair of scoundrels didn't even know how to respond to this, and they simply looked at each other in alarm. The hero said that he didn't need a penny, and they could keep all the payments. Formally, the child would be on them, but he would take him with him, and she would live with him. At first the man began to get nervous and could not say a word. To get him to talk, Chen Noa kicked him on the knee with all his might. The blow was so strong that the leg was probably very badly damaged. The man began to scream in pain, and saliva from his mouth splashed all over the floor. And then he told him that he was not going to coddle with him any longer, and told him what he was going to do. Of course, they can experience the consequences of disagreement, even though there is only one hero here, and there are 4 of them. Chen looked at the man with an arrogant look and asked how old his son was. The alarmed parents replied that he was 7 years old. The woman understood what this question could mean and shouted at him to go and take the girl with him, but not to come near the door from that moment on, and they would not interfere with each other's lives. Smiling, the hero said that he would take her, and then they would not see each other again. Passing by the impudent woman, the guy approached his little sister. He leaned over to her and explained that perhaps she had not yet realized that he was her brother, her own, and they had the same mother, after which he asked if the girl would like to live with him. If I don't move out, then she can eat everything he will eat, and no one will beat her. Without hesitation, the girl immediately agreed. Truly, the guy was glad about this outcome of events, and asked his little sister to call her brother. With a desire to know more, the guy immediately asked his sister what her name was. The little girl's name was Gu Xiaoya. The first part of the name meant the word to suffer, and in her country it was considered bad manners to call a child with such a surname. Chen Noa was amazed that there is nothing good in this family, and now she will go with him. His surname is Chen, and now the girl's name will be Chen Xiaoya. Some time later, she and the girl bought a lot of clothes and various things, after which they happily walked along the snowy roads of the city. Together with the girl they came to the hero's house. As it turned out, Sun Cuckoo was already waiting for him here. With surprise, the guy wanted to know why she came here. Indignant, the girl notified that she called him, but for some reason he did not pick up the phone. Taking his phone in his hands, the guy said that he had not seen the calls before. Sun Cuckoo immediately noticed the cute girl. Leaning towards her little sister, she immediately began to ask where Chen No took her. Smiling, he said that this was his daughter. Then he told the little girl that Chen Xiaoye should call him daddy. Sun Cuckoo heard what she heard and fell to the floor, because she was shocked by such incredible news. Little sister just watched the reaction of the unknown girl. The not very smart girl then asked her brother if she had said everything correctly. At that moment, the smart Sun Cuckoo immediately understood everything. What she heard made her angry, because in fact the little girl was just his sister. And then Chen stopped joking and asked why the girl was looking for him after all. At that moment she became embarrassed, and there was sadness in her eyes, after which she asked where he went the other day. She also said that her father was very worried about him. The other day, the director cycled down his street several times to tell him about his job. When he came back last night he was limping and said he fell off his bike. He got his feet wet and had bruises all over his legs. Chen looked closely at the girl and wanted to know how long she had been waiting for him. Taking the lady by the hand, he repeated his question, because it was very cold outside, but she admitted that she had not waited very long. Without hesitation, the brave guy invited Sun Cuckoo to his home. Embarrassed even more, my friend was against it and said it wasn't worth it. At that moment, the girl wondered if her brother and sister were dating, because she felt that there was a third wheel here. After thinking a little, Chen decided to go to another place because it was already quite dark outside. Together they arrived at a fast food restaurant, and the guy asked about Tom, whether lady's father likes to poke his nose into things that aren't his own. And then, she told something about her father. Previously, when my father was a class teacher, he would invite one student home for dinner. That student had no relatives. He was also a poor student, so he often skipped classes and got into fights. One day, to protect him, his father hugged him and did not want to let go, but that same classmate immediately pushed him away. Later, that boy came to their house at night and fell to his knees in front of the girl, sniffling and crying, saying that he was sorry for his behavior. He begged his father to leave him alone, but the class teacher was not at ease then. And a few years later something happened to this boy. It turned out that someone had done a terrible thing and taken the boy's life. After this, my father stopped going to work for a while, and my mother often began to quarrel with him because of this. Also, if Chen Nua doesn't start attending classes, he will have fewer benefits and an unstable income in the future. From that moment on, everything was clear to the hero. His father saw in him a reflection of that guy, and does not want him to become the same as him. Looking at his little sister, the hero wanted to know why she wasn't eating. And her caring brother gave her a lot of different foods to choose from. Then the girl handed him the potatoes and said that his brother should eat first. The caring young man gave her the opportunity to eat first, because he had food and he wanted his little sister to eat. The waitress came up and notified that the ice cream that was ordered was ready. With joy, little sister watched the huge glass of delicious ice cream. With a small spoon she scooped up small pieces of creamy ice cream, and with incredible pleasure I enjoyed every spoonful of delicious ice cream. Her eyes seemed to glow, and she was truly happy. Realizing that she was not the only one who should be happy, her little sister immediately handed a spoonful of ice cream to her brother. The girl began to cry, and asked her brother not to give her back. She was not going to bother her, and would wash and sleep, and could also sweep the floor, wipe the table, cook rice. Chen Nua decided to remind her that he said that in the future she would live with him and would never return to that terrible place. The tearful sister promised that she would obey him, be obedient and flexible. With a smile, Sun Cuckoo could not believe that this was really his sister, because he was so sweet to her, and this was clearly not like him. Everything in their relationship was really difficult, and a few words were clearly not enough. After that, the guy asked if the girl would go home for dinner, because her father would be looking for her, after which he asked to tell the director that she was with him and then, perhaps, he would sweep the playground again. It turned out that mom and dad had a fight with the girl today, but the hero believed that this was normal for them. Her father had never argued with her before, and she didn't know what was happening lately. Her mother was always busy at work, and now, every time the girl returns, she feels that her mother is always nagging her father. Looking at Sun Kuku, Chen Noa asked her not to interfere in the affairs of adults. In her opinion, it was very old-fashioned, and her father told her the same thing. Today he gave her 50 yuan and asked her to go play with her classmates so as not to stay at home. And suddenly, the guy immediately extended his hand. He wanted to divide the money equally, because her father gave her 50 yuan. The reaction followed immediately, and the guy was deservedly hit on the hand. Sun Kuku stuck out her tongue and said that he might not even dream about this. Some time later, they all ended up at the girl's house. The joyful classmate thanked her for showing her off and was getting ready to go home. Suddenly, she spread her arms and waited for something. The hero was surprised, because he just walked the girl home, and she was already going to hug him. But in fact, at that moment she wanted to hug her little sister. All because the sister was very sweet, and the girl asked her to tell her brother that today she would spend the night at her sister's house. But the little sister still decided to stay with her brother, and together they headed home. Suddenly, an unknown car began to drive up. There was a mother, a classmate, who was in the company of a smoking man. Alarmed at the hero, he continued to watch what would happen next. Events continued the next morning, and the little sister called her brother to breakfast. Carrying Chen Xiaoye happily prepared breakfast for her brother. This was truly amazing, because the girl was only 5 years old, and she already knew how to cook. Such skills really were not inherent in the child, but the girl was indeed more mature than her peers. And also, I cooked really delicious noodles. Little sister also reminded her brother that he needed to eat quickly, otherwise he would be late for school, but then who would take care of her if Chen Noa went to school? Suddenly, the little girl seemed upset about something, and she said that she could take care of herself, and did not want her brother to get tired, otherwise he would hate her and drive her away in the future. Caring brother asked her not to worry, because he would never hate her. The little sister was still worried about her fate, and that her newly acquired brother might hate her. Then the girl was happy and was about to go get her brother's coat. The hero gave up and decided to go to school. Events continued to happen after school. Approaching the bicycle parking lot, the hero saw a terrible thing. His bike was not where it was parked. Approaching the security guard, he wanted to tell him that his bicycle had been stolen. But the bald man didn't care at all about what they were telling him. At that moment the guy understood everything and was going to find his bike himself. It took quite a long time to find the bike, but fortunately it was found. Having come up with a cunning plan, he hid and tied the bicycle to one of the posts. Meanwhile, watching who will approach him, several men approached the bicycle and observed how tightly it was tied to the pole. One of the men made sure that the owner did not show up, the other began to break the chain in order to steal the bicycle. Chen Nua witnessed his bicycle being stolen and being ridden by several men. The reaction was immediate, and he realized that he needed to act. Events continued to occur on Tungzi Street. The villains began to take the bicycle somewhere, leading it through the gate. This was the most famous street where used cars went missing. The thieves took the bicycle to a bald man who had a lot of different bicycles and spare parts for them in the parking lot. It was then that the bald man saw a new product that was kindly provided to him. The impudent men informed the bald man that the bicycle was brand new, and you could even smell the fresh smell of oil that had not dissipated. Then the buyer of the bicycle asked where it was found, but the man asked him not to worry because it was far from their area. An enterprising bald scoundrel decided to buy a bicycle at the market price. With the desire to get more, the man began to repeat that the bike was completely new, and he needed to add a little more money. "I'm not going to do this," the bald man asked me not to talk nonsense, and handed me a few bills. Suddenly, Chen No began knocking on the gate in order to attract the attention of the men. A bald man with a cigarette in his mouth shouted why this kid was knocking here and wanted to know what he was doing here. Approaching closer, the hero told him that he wanted to ask him something, but the unfriendly bald man ordered him to get out of here. Taking a deep breath, he immediately realized that he needed to use his power. From his pocket he immediately took out a huge metal chain, and then, opening the gate, he began to approach the men. "I don't suspect anything," the thieves were doing their job as if nothing had happened, and at that time a guy was approaching them who wanted to take revenge. The boss immediately approached him and asked the kid what he was looking for here. He reiterated that he wanted to ask the boss something, namely, where their safe is located. The bald man's name was Wu Dalai. He was in prison for many years. In his youth he was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment due to fighting and mutilation, but was released 6 months earlier for good behavior. I am serving a sentence and was lucky enough to meet an influential man. After leaving prison, with his support, he expanded the trade in used cars on the market and sold stolen goods. Over the years, he learned how to make money, stopped being good and kind. Now he is ruthless, so he was ready to do anything for the sake of his business. I'm about to attack. The bald man has fallen into a trap. His leg was entangled in a chain, and the chain was in Chen Noa's hands. With a deft movement of his hand, he began to pull the villain. Wu Dalai screamed in pain and begged to let him go, because he had read that his leg would now be broken. Crying from unbearable pain, he lay on the ground and whined. The alarmed scoundrel shouted that all the money was in the locker. Smiling sweetly, the hero followed the insolent man's instructions. Some time later, he had absolutely all the money from the locker in his hands. Satisfied, Chen No began to leave the scene, taking all the money. Suddenly, Wu Dalai called someone and said that she was being robbed, and the interlocutor needed to return quickly. Meanwhile, the hero was already quite far away, leaving the scoundrel's sight. Joyfully, he approached the merchant and asked to give him fried meat dumplings and dumplings in broth. Having opened the bag with money, he began to look at the amount and what was there. In total there were approximately 40,000 or 60,000 in the bag. Indeed, it was not in vain that he went there. To replenish his strength, the guy decided to eat. Suddenly, he noticed a car next to him. The men began to run out of it and headed towards the gate of the bald scoundrel. The guy immediately noticed this, after which he asked the owner to pack 8 donuts with him. Many mercenaries began to approach their boss, and they wanted to know what his condition was. Wu Dalai ordered to look for the guy who attacked him, because he was going to tear him into pieces. And meanwhile, I was thinking that this kid stole 60,000, and the man earned it in 2 days on motorcycles. The mercenaries began to ask the boss what the attacker looked like. He could easily describe what he looked like. He looked like a stupid child, a young boy with an ordinary appearance. Based on the description, one of the bandits immediately found a suitable guy, and he immediately pointed to Chen Noa, who was heading straight towards them. The angry bald man wanted to know why the guy who beat him came back. Smiling brazenly, Chen looked into his eyes and said that he didn't say that he left, and his bike was still there, he was just going out to eat. Wu Dalai's surprise knew no bounds, he began to shake with fear. And then he shouted to his mercenaries to do what they wanted with him and kill him. He also ordered them to take his money and lock the gate. This reaction only made the strong young man smile. The gate behind him was closed and he seemed to be trapped. There were many scoundrels around him, ready to do anything to him. One of the villains was the first to begin his attack. Taking a wrench he went to attack. With incredible ease, Chen deflected his attack and injured his hand on the attacker's head. Very worried about his workers, Wu Dalai continued to watch the fight. The excitement knew no bounds, and he did not know what to do in this situation. Having picked up the wrench, Chen No headed to restore justice. 10 seconds later, all the enemies were blown away and didn't even scratch him. This damn kid is too good to fight with, the bald scoundrel thought. Continuing to cry, the villain shouted that the hero was strong and apologized for the misunderstanding. But then the guy said that he realized that Wu Dalai just couldn't come to terms with the situation, and it was better to figure it out now, so that later he wouldn't hire people to find him, and the guy was going to give him time to gather his people, and he himself will not budge. The villain began to scream and beg for mercy, saying that he was wrong. The man repented and said that he could run away, but the guy would find him, and he would stop running his business. He gave up and asked if they would let him go, because they took his money and he laid everyone down. At that moment, the hero had an idea and said that he was tired of riding a bicycle, and he asked the man to find him something more interesting. Wu Dalai assured that he would find a decent option, and guaranteed the best offer. Immediately after this, he pointed out another type of transport that had been rebuilt and repainted last week. It was a Yamaha motorcycle that had been improved by the bandits' own hands by adding a jet exhaust pipe. Now the good-natured man asked if the hero was happy. All this time the guy stood and was silent. After analyzing the situation, he also added that there was no helmet. The joyful bald man shouted that he was there, everything was there. The helmet was made of carbon fiber and had anti-fog glass. As it turns out, he didn't plan to sell the motorcycle when he stole it, so he kept it for himself. Wu Dalai had never ridden it, so he gave the guy a helmet and a motorcycle and asked him to ride to his heart's content. At that moment it seemed quite reasonable, and it was okay to forgive him the first time, but the hero has one flaw: he hates bald people. After all, what's the point of pretending to be a ruthless bald man? And then the hero asked what he does when he sees children on the street. Continuing to cry, the man admitted that he did not shave, his hair naturally falls out. Some time later, the hero was racing along the road on his newly acquired motorcycle. Suddenly, he found Sun Cuckoo walking along the road. To get her attention, he began to brake sharply. And he stopped right next to a girl who was walking along the road. Angry, the girl began to scream, which she said earlier, that this was the entrance to the school, and she might scream. Taking off his helmet, Chen Noa said that she could scream. The stunned lady could not believe her eyes, and she wanted to find out where her classmate got this motorcycle, but the hero only asked her to put on a helmet, and was going to let her down before her father finished the job. But the girl was not particularly happy about this, because it was a very cold day and it was just as cold to ride. The smart guy immediately noticed a very beautiful brooch that was on Keek's jacket. This immediately angered the lady, because she thought that he was looking completely out of place. Then the guy decided to find out where she got it from. As it turned out, her mother's friend gave it to her. 2 days ago her mother took it to dinner with a friend. There was a man at the table who gave this brooch. From her appearance, Chen could easily tell that she was expensive. The lady thought that this pin was not worth a lot of money, but mom also agreed to accept this gift. As it turns out, neither she nor her mother knows that this is Van Cleef April's, a French jewelry company, and when the average salary of an ordinary person is a couple of hundred yuan, the price of this brooch is a 5-figure sum. Considering that the girl did not want to go for a ride, he wanted to give her something else. And he good-naturedly held out a certain scroll. Winking at her, Chen Noa wished her a bon appetit. After saying goodbye, he rode off into the sunset on his brand new motorcycle. Opening the package, the girl discovered a container. And there were buns in it, and she blushed because they were covered so as not to get cold. Events continued to happen on the other side, in Seoul with Li Yingwang. The girl we knew continued to rehearse her speech near the mirror. She had to say a phrase, but she couldn't do it. After several attempts, she finally managed to say, "Hello everyone, my name is Li Yingwang, I'm very glad to come here." Her older brother, meanwhile, was eavesdropping on the rehearsal. The worried brother wanted to ask his mother if she really wanted her sister to go abroad and study in Jiangning. But this was the sister's wish. For the good of their family, the sister should find herself a boyfriend. Meanwhile, Sun Cuckoo walked to the director's office. Opening the door, she found her father, who was diligently doing something. The beloved daughter kindly provided her father with food. As it turned out, these days he was busy distributing classes in the new semester, so he asked to bring him dinner every day. The friendly girl asked her father to eat quickly and said that everything was fine and she understood. She also said that she wanted her father to sit on the sofa and eat, and she was going to sit in his place and be in charge here. Sitting down in her father's place, she watched him eat. After which, I decided to look at the documents that were on his table. One of the documents greatly alarmed her, and she accidentally decided to make some changes there. As a result, Sun Cuckoo breathed a sigh of relief. She added the names of Sun Cuckoo and Chen No to the list of 6th grade students. The winter holidays began, all classmates began to go home, and thought about how to spend their free time. Events continued to happen in Sun Cuckoo's house. Chen But's father told Chen But then that his exam results this semester were not bad. He was looking forward to his further success in the new semester. At the same time, the guy thought that of course his results would be good, because he knew how to cheat very well. The director remembered something else. He heard that the guy took his sister and brought him to him, and he was interested in how he did it, because he is still too young and has to go to school. Because of this he will not be able to take care of the child. Then the guy smiled and said that he could just skip class. The man, meanwhile, began to think that it was not particularly appropriate to say this in the presence of the school principal. Out of curiosity, he asked to inquire. The child should go to kindergarten, but he is too busy with his own affairs. If the brother seriously wants to raise his sister, he must figure everything out. When Donghua and the others were brought up in a past life, there was no kindergarten, everyone was brought up on the street, the hero recalled. Suddenly, someone started knocking on the door. Everyone was happy. The director exclaimed that mom had returned. The caring daughter immediately began to open the door to her mother. The woman entered and immediately put the purse in her daughter's hands. The friendly man immediately introduced Aunt Yang, and Chen Nua greeted her. The husband introduced disciple Chen Nua to his wife, and she also greeted him. The tired woman was about to wash off her makeup and cook dinner. Events continued to occur at the beginning of the new semester, namely on Friday morning. Hiro watched the kids behind the fence shouting that they wanted to go to mom and watch TV. At that moment, it dawned on him what this kindergarten really meant. Meanwhile, the little sister began to shake with fear. The brother leaned over to her and said that from now on she would stay here from Monday to Friday, and on the weekends he would take her home. The girl needed to get used to this. The girl was noticeably worried and thought that her brother would not come for her on weekends, but the hero convinced her of this, and immediately after school he was going to come and pick her up. Events continued to occur at school. Chen Noa started walking to his class and noticed that something was happening there. Looking at the sign, he also realized that he had come to the wrong class. But I remembered that classes were disbanded in the new semester, and it was not surprising that many new faces appeared. Looking at those present, the hero noticed Sun Kuku and her friend. The girl looked enthusiastically and was amazed that the guy came to this class. All her classmates immediately began to laugh at the girl, and she begged them not to make any noise, because the lesson would begin soon. Throwing his backpack on the desk, Chen decided to sit not far from his friend. Confused, she asked if he really wanted to sit near her. A moment later, the principal came in and began to announce that from now on he would be the homeroom teacher until they graduated from school. At that very moment, the director called a student named Chen Noa, and he immediately raised his hand. The man ordered him to sit at the back of the class, because this semester the teachers would take good care of him and keep an eye on him, so he shouldn't try to cheat. The whole class started laughing, only the guy tried to explain to the teacher that in reality everything was wrong. But soon he still began to go to the back of the class and wanted to sit at the last desk. His classmate asked him not to come, because he didn't want to be involved and just continue reading the novel. A classmate was literally crying, because the guy behind him was talking to the most beautiful girl in the class, and seemed to be mocking him. Then Chen Noa noticed the novel In Search of Peace. He liked Jin Yong's novels, namely The White Horse and The Whistle of the West Wind. The phrase is all very good, but I don't like it. It lures people to read the novel. A classmate named Luo Qing was truly glad to have a guy next to him who had common interests with him. Events continued to happen after school. The hero arrived at the kindergarten. The teacher told her younger sister to be careful, otherwise she might fall. The little girl was incredibly happy that her brother came for her, and she began to cry because they were showing such care to her. With tears in her eyes, she threw herself into her older brother's arms and screamed with happiness. A caring brother asked if someone had offended her in kindergarten. The girl at that moment said that no one offended her, she was just scared, and she was afraid that her brother would not come for her. Smiling, Chen No explained to the girl that this could not happen. Together they headed home so that her brother could feed her. While riding a bicycle, the girl thought that they would go to her sister, and the hero could not understand how she knew this. The little sister immediately realized that she liked him, and the guy could not understand how children could figure this out. Slowly walking forward, Sun Kuku noticed the main character and immediately began to wave at him. She stood with Luo Qing on the sidewalk and called out to Chen Noa. A good-natured classmate was able to lend a bicycle, and the hero was very grateful to him. The boy's surprise knew no bounds when he saw his beautiful younger sister. Offering the girl a chocolate bar, the young man said that he was her brother's friend and she could call him brother. The brother also did not mind the girl taking the chocolate and asking her to eat it. A classmate thought Chen Xiaoye was very cute. If he had seen her earlier, he would have asked his parents for a sister. Unfortunately, his father spent half his life making money, did not marry for a long time and therefore he was born late. Then they were 40 years old, and now they are already 57. Encouraging the guy, the hero said that even if a son appeared in old age, he is still a father. It was originally decided that he would invite Xiao Yi to dinner tonight, but who knew that her father was working overtime again, and she heard that the education department was coming for an inspection next Monday, so they were planning to eat another day. Luo Qing was happy about this news, because he was bored at home alone, and suggested that they go to the gaming room to play together. There are new restaurants in Dongshan, and a fast food restaurant next to it. They can all eat together after having a good time together. Soon, they all headed to the slot machine room together. Joyful a classmate was going to play Extreme Speed, and the three of them could play together. The hero was only pleased with this idea, and he knew that this is what male friendship looks like. A cute girl and her sister offered to play basketball together, but first the guy was going to go to the toilet. In the meantime they could play together with his sister. While going to the toilet, someone also entered the room with slot machines. These were hooligans who were drunk and wanted to have fun. The main bully took off his cast this morning and immediately came to celebrate. Suddenly, one of the guys showed his brother that someone he knew was near the slot machine. This was the same Sun Cuckoo that the scoundrel had pestered before. The guy immediately thought about it and realized that today was truly a great day. Coming out of the toilet, Chen Noa discovered the hooligans who were harassing his classmate. The worried little sister called out to her big brother to come help. Suddenly, someone came up behind the bully and asked if he had been discharged from the hospital. At that moment the scoundrel turned around and shouted, "Is the one who is asking blind and not seeing?" It was Chen Noa who approached, smiling sweetly and watching the bully. His partner interceded and told him to get out of here, because his brother was talking to his daughter-in-law, and the guy wanted to know where he even came from here. Luo Qing also decided to stand up for his friend and asked who was running into Chen No. The good-natured comrade told his friend not to worry, and he shouted to the whole crowd who was asking for a fight here. The main bully's partner shouted that he himself was looking for a fight, and he began to approach his friend to attack him. Luo Qing shouted that his father was Luo Dajin, and he wanted to see who would defeat whom. Luo Dajin's father's name seemed to fall like a heavy stone on the heads of the hooligans. After learning that Luo Qing was Luo Dajin's son, the bullies began to apologize, as if they had misunderstood him, and he and his classmate were just chatting, and today they met Luo's boss, and are now leaving. Suddenly, the comrade began to call Brother Kolu, and told him that someone was going to kill him. Meanwhile, several men were playing cards, and one of them was a brother. Puzzled, Brother Hulu asked who dared to touch Qing. The men went to investigate the situation and the brother asked what was going on. Luo Qing said that the scoundrel told him that he wanted to deal with him. My boyfriend immediately began to make excuses that he didn't say this, and his brother behind was actually a criminal and said it. The brother at that moment took the scoundrel by the neck, and could not believe that someone wanted to offend his brother. With a powerful blow, the good brother neutralized the filthy hooligan with just a single blow.